WBF Rochester, the sports leader. 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan, Rochester, an Odyssey sports station.
It's time to start the show and talk about the sports we saw. Inside jokes and takes from Danger and Battaglia. Bills and the Sabres and the Ambers. Who gave a microphone to these jerks? Gene's a big-timer, a social misfit. Clueless to the title of the biggest buskeg hits. Chuck Munchie's goons have the last say. So thanks for your time, Mr. Mayo. Danger likes his cold ones and he likes his bears. But this is Rochester, cute Francesa.
Oh, who cares?
He's critical of Sean, he's critical of Alan. Of course he married Sandy, cause she's Italian. Welcome to the sports bar, that's where you are. Welcome to the sports bar, that's where you are. Welcome to the sports bar, that's where you are. With Danger and Battaglia.
Not gonna lie, Gino, I'm feeling kind of sentimental today as we start this afternoon in the sports bar, and we welcome you on in. We appreciate you listening, however you may be doing so. You're hearing us on AM 950, 95.7 FM in Rochester, the free to download Odyssey app where we sound our best, and our stream, which is up and rolling now. You can watch us on YouTube, our YouTube channel there. Like, subscribe, hit that bell, that notification bell, so you always know when we go live, and also on Twitch at The Fan Rochester. Feeling sentimental because today we are celebrating a very special anniversary in the sports bar.
Which I had no idea. Danger hit me with that today. Like, hey, do you know what today was? No, actually I did. I know there, like yesterday was the storm from 2 years ago. That I remember. But
yep.
what?
7 years ago this happened. 7 years ago. So we were still in the early infancy stages of the sports bar. We've been on the air together doing this show for 8 years.
8 years.
Just over 8 years now. Oh, next year will be a special anniversary.
The 9-year anniversary.
It will be the 9 years of the sports bar with Danger and Battaglia.
9 times.
Well, let's work it 1 month at a time here, bud.
7 years ago, this happened. 7 years ago, in the early infancy of the sports bar with Danger and Battaglia. An outcome so shocking that a legend was born.
This is a masterstroke by McDermott.
Anything more than what Tyrod did last week, I would consider thriving for a Buffalo Bills quarterback.
Then that should be Peterman's stats after the first quarter.
Peterman is going to make mistakes.
He might not make it out of the first half.
I have been waiting since week 1, and I think that Peterman, from everything we've seen in preseason and in the little bit in New Orleans, I think he's the man.
Dom, I'm warning you.
You watch, Gene.
You are crazy. Why can't it be us? Dude, you're going to be so disappointed
I'm
on
not.
Monday.
There is no way I'm going to be disappointed Monday.
He was disappointed on Monday, and a legend was born. 7 years ago, the Buffalo Bills took on the Los Angeles Chargers and fell 54-24. Nate Peterman throwing 5 interceptions in one half of NFL football.
That was Sean McDermott's first year. And Sean McDermott, in his infancy, wasn't the coach to take the blame, always deflect when he was asked about the decision. I remember this quote, "I don't regret the decision, I regret the outcome."
Yeah, I remember that very well. It was when we kind of learned, okay, there's an arrogance to being an NFL head coach, and he's showing it right now. It's almost as if to say, you know what, I don't care what you think, I'm going to do this, and it's going to work because I believe, I have faith, this is my guy. I mean, Nathan Peterman had some sort of control, mind control, Musk, something that was intoxicating to NFL head coaches, and it was McDermott that bit first.
I believe probably if you got him in a room, like there's a clip of Andrew Luck doing X's and O's with John Gruden, and Andrew Luck is like, okay, and this, that's Nate Peterman, right? If you got him in front of a whiteboard, he could describe every play.
Right.
Problem is, you actually need the talent.
Yeah, you get introduced to Peterman, and maybe it's in the pre-draft process, and he's going through his work ethic, and he's breaking down film and up on the whiteboard, and you're Sean McDermott, and you're just smitten. So you draft him, and then you think to yourself, you know what? Maybe he's better than Tyrod Taylor. Maybe.
Well,
do you remember the week before the Charger game?
that was again another low point in Bills' drought history. Up to that point, they hadn't made the postseason. The streaker. I remember the streaker going across the field after it's the Saints. The Saints come in, absolutely demolish, run all over the place. Tyrod was terrible that day.
Terrible.
And Nathan Peterman, in garbage time, delivered a touchdown drive. And, the shout song was played, and the flag wavers came out. And I'm like, okay, who cares? Oh, no. Apparently that was enough. And I remember this too, Danger. Like, you and I, the decision came down after that game. Like, wait a second. Hold on. Tyrod's not hurt. Tell me the time in NFL history that a fifth-round rookie went in because just of a coach's decision. Not an injury, not anything else. There was nothing up until that point that would lead us to believe that Nathan Peterman was ready for that moment.
Correct. I remember that Saints game. I was at that Saints game. If you were at that Saints game, you may remember it as well. It was depressing. The weather was dank. It was just gray and overcast and cold, and the Saints just came in there, and Drew Brees just did whatever he wanted to do. And Tyrod was atrocious that game. Really, really bad.
Terrible.
And,
Terrible Tyrod.
And so compared to that, anything would look good. And so when we got back to work that week after the Saints game, one of our coworkers, whose office was right next to mine, big Bills fan, massive Bills fan, and very typical Bills fan who only views the team through rose-colored glasses all the time. You love them because they're eternally optimistic, and they believe that no matter what the case, this team is going to win. This is it. This is the move. This is the season. You all have a fan friend in your life who is this way, and there's nothing wrong with them being that way, but there is a bit of reality that needs to get dosed in there as well, and that's where we came in. He came into my office that day that they announced it, so excited, because everybody was so frustrated with Tyrod. Tyrod isn't the guy. He's not doing it. Did you see how bad he looked? He looked so bad in that game. This is the move. And I want to say that the Bills going into that game were like 5-5. They were a 500 team with Tyrod as their quarterback. For Tyrod, that's actually pretty good.
Yeah, the Bills were farting around at that point.
They were.
They were farting around.
He came into our office so excited about this move. This is the move. And you heard it. I believe this is a masterstroke. If Nathan Peterman is what we saw in the Saints game in the preseason, he could be the man. And we all know how that turned out. Masterstroke was born, and thus a legend born in the sports bar.
Right. He didn't come on as Master. He came on as Chris. That was his real name. And literally, it was recalling how he called this a masterstroke. You and I just were like, hey, masterstroke, how did that kind of work out? And then it just stuck. It was one of those things that stuck. And to Chris's credit, he allowed us to continue just to call him masterstroke.
Now, he also made predictions after that initial prediction with some regularity here in the sports bar. And almost without fail, he would be the exact opposite would be true of what he said. It was almost like you had to really try hard to be as wrong as he was. We all remember the Rams-Patriots Super Bowl where Masterstroke made some predictions.
I do have faith that Wade Phillips, the defensive coordinator for the Rams, will find a way to take some pieces of Brady's arsenal out of the game. I would be shocked right now if Edelman had a good game in the Super Bowl.
MVP.
I think Phillips is smart enough to take him out, and I don't think he's going to be a factor. The one thing I do like, by the way, and I will say this, I know there's a lot of prop bets on this. I don't know what the number is on Chris Hogan. I just have a gut feeling that he's going to have a big game for the Patriots because they're going to take Edelman out.
It's the best. The absolute best.
To review, the former Bills head coach is good.
Yep.
And the former Bills wide receiver is good. But Edelman,
And Edelman was the MVP. Now, this went on for a while, and Master Stroke continued to work with us for a while. And eventually, as happens in life, your paths go in different directions, and his path led him down to Florida. He lives on the Gulf Coast now, and he's enjoying life with his wife. And I want to say he's not retired, but he's just enjoying life better down in Florida. It's where he wanted to be. We kept in touch. We actually talked to him just a couple of seasons ago. We had Master Stroke on with us, and this is when we had an issue, serious issue with Master Stroke.
This is when the bid ended, actually.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough game, but I actually like the Bills in a low-scoring game, like 23-20. We've always figured out how to stop their offense, thankfully. Not completely, but we seem to have always had a decent time against Lamar Jackson. And they always seem to be a lot lower scoring than usual. I just have a feeling it's going to be lower scoring, and the Bills will be right around their spread with a 3-point win somewhere in there. But I like them in the low 20s, somewhere there.
It's possible, Master Stroke, but we're going to hold you accountable one way or the other. So you've got them winning something that they normally don't do, a close game against the Ravens. You say 23-20 on Sunday.
I do. That goal for their last 8 has got to end somewhere, and I think it ends this week.
Now, remember where the Bills were in the 2022 season. They were a team that was still kind of learning how to win games. A lot of close games, and in one-score games, there was a stretch there where they were 0-8 in one-score games.
Right. They're coming off an AFC Championship appearance, but you could see there was miles between them and Kansas City. They lose by 3 scores in that game, and that was it. In the years you and I have been doing it, and again, we're coming up on 9 years, we've never picked the score right once. And that guy did. He's the only guy in the history of Sports Bar that said, this is going to be the score of the game. And he called it.
So, at that point, we're like, well, nobody cares when you're right. We don't want you in here being right all the time. We only like you when you're wildly unpredictable and you're making predictions that can't possibly come to fruition.
I still think, and again, we have to hash this out. We allow him back in once for the holidays.
I reached out to him today to wish him a happy anniversary. If you want, we can talk to him during happy hour. We can reach out to him during happy hour.
Did he get back to you?
Yeah,
Yeah. What's he doing? Just kind of hanging out there?
Yeah, I was just like, hey, would you consider coming on in the sports bar to celebrate our anniversary? And he said, I'll be in the car from 5 to 5:30. I'm like, oh, that's happy hour. Maybe we can get you on.
Maybe we can get him on. I know there would be a certain sector of Bills fans and listeners that would say, absolutely not. This Bills team has a feel of destiny to them. Let's not invite this guy in, invite the bad karma, because then all of a sudden you lose the Niners, you lose the Rams, you lose the Lions. And
bad karma. I love it. I mean, the guy is the most harmless, lovable Bills fan you'll ever meet, yet he's the enemy because he's the one that's thought that starting Peterman would be a good idea. Keep that guy away from my team. Nate Peterman, 6 of 14, 66 yards, 5 interceptions.
And these weren't, it's off the receiver's hands or no, they were pretty bad. Yeah. It was in the soccer stadium. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a brutal, brutal outcome. But it was a day that will live in sports bar infamy forever because it gave birth to a legend. Happy anniversary, Master Stroke, from your friends here in the sports bar.
Oh, I'd love to catch up with him if we can get him in the app. We are loaded today.
We are loaded
today.
Yeah,
Bills news, looking forward, looking back. Matt Perino, Syracuse Post Standard coming up at 3:25. But Danger, go easy on him. You have a bone to pick with Perino?
I think he just needs to get with the program, okay? I mean, if you can't enjoy a Bills victory with a little Italian music, a little Bruno Martino, and you kick your feet up and just relax, you pour yourself a nice glass, a tumbler of bourbon or scotch, maybe light a victory cigar. I mean, that's living. But Perino thinks it's weird? Nah, get out of here. Get with the program, pal. Get with the program, Farino.
I'm going to say maybe he softened his stance. At least I hope he is. I kind of hit him with that, didn't kind of get it, maybe after it sinks in a little bit. Michael Leone, he would understand, right?
I think so.
Yeah, head coach of the Rochester Americans. Now today, not in studio. That's because, well, they're on the bus on their way up to Montreal. So I don't know if he's going to be on the bus. I don't know if they've checked in, but we'll catch up with the head coach as now he's got Devin Levi he can trot out tomorrow night between the pipes.
He's going to have a real dilemma on his hands here come February if it is a Bills-Lions Super Bowl like many are predicting.
He's already said he's totally Lions. And as it turns out, he could actually go to New Orleans. Isn't that weird? Like the Ambergs don't play on Saturday, and you could make it down there.
Yeah, if you have an in, if you have a way, you got to check that off your bucket list. Absolutely. Week 12 of the NFL gets underway Thursday night. We'll talk waiver wires for fantasy football with Michael F. Florio from NFL Network stopping by before we get to 5 o'clock as well.
Yeah, I guess we can kind of put the rest of Audric Estime, like, hey, he's the guy.
Denver running back for that matter.
Yeah, I guess that's not the way to kind of go, but we'll take a look at these matchups. Maybe you have some bye week concerns. It used to be bye weeks were in October. I'm fine with them being now, actually. It seems, oh, my gosh, could you ask for a better bye week for Buffalo? Or would you say opposite, coming off a win like that, you want to get right back out on the field?
How about the concept of, I'll bring this up to him, how about the concept of the sabotage drop? At this point of the season, there are players that are probably sitting on your bench or on your roster that like, you maybe are using them, but you don't really want to use them, and they're not going to. You just know they're not going to produce the rest of the season, so you just drop them in favor of somebody who might give you some potential down the stretch, or a handcuff, a running back who could step into a larger role down the stretch here. The sabotage drop, where another manager sees a brand name player who isn't producing but doesn't really know and goes ahead and picks him up, thinking, "Oh yeah, that's the player I can start this week," only to see them do nothing. I wonder if Florio has a list of players that qualify as a sabotage drop at this point of the season.
Are we buying in on MVS? He scored again.
Are we buying in on him? It's a good question. We should ask him.
Yeah, we're going to ask him on that. Not that we're paying attention to New Orleans Saints football, but maybe your fantasy team needs a receiver. F coming up at 4:45, and all right, we're thinking Master Stroke will be on the phone.
Well, we'll try and get Master Stroke on during happy hour to celebrate our anniversary. 7 years ago today, Nathan Peterman starting in place of Tyrod Taylor against the Chargers. 866-4FAN is our phone number if you want to pull up a stool. 585-866-4326. And we're on X. That's Elon's Twitter, at the Fan Rochester. All day today, all I've seen in my feed is Jets content. Jets firing their GM, Joe Douglas. They're in their bye week. Somebody had to be fired, I guess. There you go. The Jets are as dysfunctional as they've ever been.
There's a movie from 10, 15 years ago that's super dark, Danger. Did you ever see Very Bad Things?
Who's in that?
Cameron Diaz.
Yes.
She's the bride-to-be, and the plot of this is
they're in Vegas.
Yeah, and it's kind of just dark humor on how weddings, we make too much of them, and, well, basically, a lot of people end up dead in this. Who's next on the Jets that their career's going to end here? Oh, my gosh, the head coach, the GM, the owner might be like, you know what, I'm going overseas. Let somebody else handle this. This was a promising team. This was a team that had young talent. This was the team 2 years ago that we were concerned about here in Buffalo. It's not the Dolphins. It's the Jets. The Jets play this physical brand, and the Jets have this head coach that we know from the 49ers. All they need is a quarterback. Oh, we didn't get it right in the draft. Let's try this again. When's the next time the Jets are going to be like what happened to that physicality? What happened to everything? You lost to Anthony Richardson. You lost to a guy that was benched the week before. So I don't mean to pile on you, Jet fans. Just the fall and the lack of promise. And you know where it starts? It starts right at the top. What you have to be hoping is, hey, Mr. President is going to give your owner an assignment overseas and let somebody else call the shots.
Well, if anybody calls the shots, it'll be his brother. Maybe things improve if that happens. But with Joe Douglas, you look at his track record. I mean, I guess if there's a blemish, it's believing that Zach Wilson was going to be your franchise quarterback and not doing everything you can to surround him with the kind of talent to make him successful in the NFL. You could argue that you did with the skill position players that you drafted. Garrett Wilson is great. Breece Hall is fantastic. Sauce Gardner. I mean, you had the offensive and defensive rookies of the year on both sides of the ball. You drafted talent. This guy drafted talent. At what point did the owner become meddlesome in the operation? Well, I can tell you when it was probably like 4 years ago. And at that point, Joe Douglas kind of hamstrung and was not really able to do his job the way he effectively knows how to do. Joe Douglas is going to be fine. The Jets are not going to be fine after this move. Robert Saleh will be fine, but the Jets will not be fine.
Is Robert Saleh amused by what's happening?
Robert Saleh going to Green Bay and doing what he's doing for the rest of this season is, I believe, just a deliberate FU to Aaron Rodgers. Did anybody complain in Green Bay when Aaron Rodgers left? Was anybody upset when Aaron Rodgers left? I mean, doesn't that tell you all you need to know? When a good player, somebody you love, leaves an organization, it's met with sadness. It's met with resistance. No, don't let him go. What's wrong with us? No, they're all like, yeah, see ya, bye, bye-bye. And now you've got Saleh in Green Bay, where I'm sure Rodgers views that as like a direct attack on him, on his loyalty. And you could say he didn't get the coach fired. He got the coach fired. And you could say that the GM wasn't going to get signed. His contract was expiring. I mean, if you're the Jets, it doesn't matter what your next move is. You could try to sell me on anybody as their next GM or head coach, and I'd be like, yeah, that's great. Good for you. Who's the owner of the team? Next case. It's not going to change. Will not change. Dysfunction starts at the top. And they are dysfunctional, boy. I have no idea. I mean, I get it. You make the move now, I suppose, but what does that do? What message does that send to somebody who might be in line to be your next GM or your next head coach? This is how we act.
You're right. Like, you're hoping you can hire a GM and then hire the coach, or maybe this will be the Jet thing. Oh, well, Phil Savage did such a good job here. We're going to just keep him on.
Savage, that's right.
He's the interim GM.
That's right. I mean, like, based on what? What success? Based on what? Good luck. I just think it's a mess. It's an absolute mess. Like, are the players now going to be motivated because the GM is out of the building? Is this going to help you win games down the stretch?
Well, what's the next thing in the storyline? It's an injury, right? Like, how do we get Aaron Rodgers? How does he exit steady? He's not the type of guy, all right, my team is eliminated and it's December 29th. I'm going to go up to Buffalo and face that defense. Can we call it right now? He's not playing in that game?
I think that would be hilarious. I'm not rooting for injury, but it does feel like the kind of thing where, oh, yeah, my hamstring, just not. I want to give Rodgers at least the benefit of the doubt in that he does love playing football. I think he does love playing football. He's just not good at it anymore. He can't do what he used to do. He probably loves playing.
Huh. You mean to tell me once you hit the age of 40, this is more often than not what happens? You're kidding.
You hit a wall. You hit an absolute wall. He was cooked in Green Bay. And what the Jets gave up to get him, which is essentially 2 top 45 picks, somewhere in that ballpark, that's basically what they gave Green Bay for Rodgers.
I want to go back and look at all the tweets. First Monday Night Football game because the Jets go down the field. The Jets are going to be a problem, everyone. Oh, my gosh. They should have stopped right there. That was the highlight of the season. Or maybe it was a Thursday to win over the Patriots. Like, what is the Jets highlight reel from 2024 going to be?
Well, these are problems that we're not experiencing, luckily, anymore here, thankfully, anymore here with the Bills. And to talk about during the bye week here, to talk about the state of the organization, where we are and what's ahead for the 9-2 Buffalo Bills, we always love welcoming in Matt Perino, who covers the team for the Syracuse Post-Standard. He joins us next on The Fan.
New York Jets firing general manager Joe Douglas. Phil Savage, the former Browns GM, takes over on an interim basis. Of course, it's the bye week for the Bills players as they are off this week. Sean McDermott on what is after the bye.
A little bit of it is rest. I think a little bit of it is, having a chance to do some self-scouting and evaluation of what we do and how we do things and fundamentals as well. I think the other part is, making sure, we put together a good game plan for when the players return as well.
Matt Perino, Syracuse Post-Standard, and the Shout podcast joining us next year in the Sports Bar. Amherst hockey tomorrow, the team playing at Laval. We'll talk to head coach Mike Leone next hour. Sabres out west tomorrow night, taking on Los Angeles. Sports brought to you by GetMyPerks.com, where you can save 2 hours at Wildwood. Gene Battaglia, the Fan, Rochester.
Top Shelf Sports Talk. You're hanging out in the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia on the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
Back in the Sports Bar, it's Danger and Battaglia. Glad you're with us, and always excited to welcome in our buddy covering the Buffalo Bills for the Syracuse Post-Standard. Even on the bye week, we're talking Bills football with Matt Perino. And Matt, right off the top here, I got to say, I know I wasn't here last week, but I got to report back from my co-host across from me here. You're not on board with our Bruno Martino Victory Monday celebration, the listening to Italian music after a Bills win. That you found this weird, off-putting. Talk to me about this, because I want you to get with the program, pal.
I just thought that it felt like Gino was trying to wine and dine me, okay? Like it was real, like low tones, like a real, like different vibe. There it is. And It's just like, I don't know, if I'm going into dinner, yeah, let's go. Let's have a glass of wine. Let's get some chicken parmesan. But we're talking football, so it's just a little bit weird. But you guys do what you want to do. There's no judgment when Matt Perino comes into the Sports Bar. I like everything that Gino and Danger's got going on.
Yeah, listen, here's one thing we can agree on, Matt. You may not be into this song. Don't be the medium guy who waves your finger at music here.
Oh, no. I like a little music. What else you got?
That's well, Matt, in all seriousness, and again, for anybody who's like, why do they do that? It literally was the day after the Bills-Cardinals win. It's a Monday, and Danger is trying to find I don't know how we landed on Bruno Mars, Danger, but you hit the wrong button.
Yeah, I just grabbed the wrong thing, and all of a sudden this classical Italian music is playing. I'm like, you know what? It doesn't sound that bad. I kind of like where we're at right now. Let's kick up our feet, maybe pour a nice glass of wine or a nice bourbon, light up a Victory cigar, and this is how we're celebrating Victory Monday in the Sports Bar moving forward.
When I lived in Vegas, there was this like speakeasy, old school, it's called Capos, and you walk in and you go to the front door like you're going into a restaurant, and you walk in, it's just this big hollowed out room, and you're like, what's going on here? So you start looking around, and you're like looking for a door or an entrance, then all of a sudden a guy behind the door like pops open this little like look through window and says, oh, welcome to Capos. What's the password?
Yeah.
You're like, what? If you know it, you can get in. But that's the kind of music they played in there. And so, like, I'm done with the music. Just the timing. It just was a little odd.
Matt, a win over the Chiefs. And, yes, Josh Allen was impressive. The defense was impressive. Tell me your thoughts here on what Sean McDermott did. Does Sean McDermott of a few years ago on 4th and 2 actually trust Allen, trust his offense to go for it in that situation?
I thought Mike Golick Jr. had a great post on my post when I talked that after the game. I felt like this was a moment where it felt like Sean McDermott leveled up a little bit. And he quote tweeted the post with a Matrix gif.
Yes.
That says, it's Morpheus saying he's starting to believe. And I was like, first of all, I'm a sucker for a Matrix gif to start with. But it makes a lot of sense. It's like all of the painful moments that, this team and McDermott specifically has endured. I think you have to learn after a while that the only way to beat an aggressive team like the Chiefs is to beat them with aggression. And, we all saw that movie before. Had they gone for a field goal, which, by the way, is not a chip shot and is not a guarantee with the way that Tyler Bass has been kicking the football. I know he had that really nice moment, but to miss that extra point early in that game, and oh, by the way, my game prediction, 31-21 Bills, Bass, missed field or extra point, I would have had it right on the nose. So that was tough for me. But they kicked that field goal, and you turn around, it's a 5-point game. You give the ball back with 2 minutes to Patrick Mahomes, and you're telling me he's not going to go drive down for 7 with what we saw on the drive, the previous drive when they went down pretty easy to score late in the fourth quarter. So I think you knew what was on the line. You knew what you had to do. I thought that the way that they moved the ball on that drive, and then a little bit less fanfare, that drive at the end of the second quarter when you're down and you're trying to get some points to go up with the lead, and then you're going to get the ball after the half, they managed that drive perfectly in the way that they used the clock. They got the ball down the field and then were able to get the 3 points. I just thought it was a big moment for Sean McDermott.
Yeah, and you're making great points. We discussed this yesterday as well. I'm curious as to if there was a moment where Sean McDermott did gain that sense of self-awareness. Because let's face it, everybody watching that game knew or knows that if you settle for a field goal there and you give Mahomes that much time, they're going to score on you. But it feels like that was the first time that McDermott actually realized it and took action, and Josh took matters into his own hands because he knew he had the faith and the trust of his head coach to go out there and make a play. Was there a specific time here with McDermott over the last season or so where you think he kind of – I have one thing in my mind that I'm thinking of that, like, well, maybe now he'll become more self-aware of what he does and how he does it. And that's the Ty Dunn piece that kind of exposed him for some of the things that he said early in his coaching days with the Buffalo Bills. Is just a more mature Sean McDermott that has a little bit more self-awareness now?
Yeah, I think when you asked that question, and I got to thinking about some games that would have been maybe the impetus for a real shift. Remember that Eagles game where it felt like the Bills, it was right around the tie piece. I think it was the week before the tie piece came out. And they were moving the ball. They were scoring points. It was a bit of a shootout, and they end up winning on that field goal. And I think that there was a little bit of a less than aggressive approach to that last drive. And who knows what the actual moment was. But I think in looking at this team, losing another one-score game to end your season last year against KC at home, to me, that should have then equaled 9 months of Sean McDermott taking a long look in the mirror. And to his credit, I think bringing in John Perry, who, by the way, early returns haven't been great in that department. Now, I did ask him about the challenge in the first half, and he said they didn't have a lot of time. They had a couple replays that they were looking at. And, it turns a 3rd and 1 into a 3rd and 8. And so the advantage of that potential play there, that Sean McDermott said he'd probably do it again. And then I kind of agree with that, even though I didn't think it was a good challenge. If you're fumbling around in the moment and Perry's trying to run through a couple of different angles and you say it's close enough and the risk outweighs or the reward outweighs the risk, because it is the first half, but that's kind of a side note. And I just think that, like, Perry has not been super great in that department so far. But who knows? Maybe these are the kinds of gaffes, work-throughs, like, as that relationship is still kind of building, that you need. But just the aggressiveness, it never for a moment seemed like on 4th and 2 with the game on the line right there that they ever even considered not going for it there. And that, to me, is like just the assertiveness and the confidence to go for it. And he talked about it after the game, too, saying that they spent all week going through that specific scenario around that time left with that game situation and what are they going to do in that moment. And they made that decision before they ever got to the game. And that, to me, is like the big step, is like, all right, I'm preparing for anything that gets thrown at me, and I'm going to know what to do in the moment in a blink.
Matt Perino, Syracuse Post-Standard, and the Shout podcast is now, Matt, we're not talking about the division. We're talking about the race for the number 1 seed. And, look, before we get into all the issues surrounding the Bills here, oops, sorry about that. I'm talking with my hands here. Is there the Chiefs are a team that Buffalo facing just as much as a divisional opponent. And when you're looking at the Chiefs at 9-1, how does this Chiefs team compare to Chiefs teams in years past, would you say? How would you assess this race for the number 1 overall seed?
To me, the biggest problem that I think the Chiefs have is that their real pillar players, Chris Jones, Travis Kelce, who have been thorns in the Bills' side for years, they just don't quite seem like the same players. Now, it's a dangerous thing to say because I think we kind of said it about Kelce last year, but they're older. And as the years go on and you're facing, some of these younger up-and-coming players, I mean, I thought for most of that game the other day, Osiris Torrance played really well. Baldinger put out a clip with, I think, 12, 13 plays where Torrance was having, a ton of success against Chris Jones, who dominates in those one-on-one spots. Now, Jones was also double-teamed a ton in that game, as he's going to be in most of the time, but that hasn't worked for the most part over the course of their time. So I think that's a big piece of it, and they don't have anybody else opposite Kelce that you have to be fearful for. I mean, that drive by Xavier Worthy, that was about the best drive that he's had all season, and it just didn't even really matter because his impact on the game was just that one drive where they were able to get in the end zone, and Travis Kelce really didn't do anything all game. So I think that's, to me, the biggest thing. I also think that Josh Allen is if you're thinking about it in the terms of grade school, middle school, high school, college, undergrad, then graduate school, and then PhD. I think Josh Allen has a PhD in going against Spagnuolo's defense at this point. Is he always going to get the upper hand and ace every test? No. But there's not a lot of things at this point going up against that Kansas City defense and that play caller specifically that he hasn't seen. So I think when you add all of that together and the newness to this offense, this is something that I was harping on all offseason. And I think a lot of people were pushing back. You lose Stephon Diggs, you lose Mitch Morse, you lose Gabriel Davis. But the way they reimagine the offense with the specific pieces, we're seeing it incrementally week by week, them figuring out different skill sets. The Curtis Samuel revelation over the last 2 weeks is massive. This is exactly what they brought him here to be. And he's a defensive PI, which would have been for 20-some yards, where he gets interfered with and doesn't get that added to his stat line. And then that short play in the flat where he catches it and probably goes for 8 to 10 more, away from a 100-yard game with that massive touchdown late in the game. That's huge. And now you have to deal with all these different flavors and a really good, strong running game that goes 3 players deep. And to me, I think that's the biggest difference.
Matt, when you look ahead to what's left of this season, with under the headline of it's not necessarily who you play, but when you play them, it's kind of shocking to look at the schedule now and see only one team that's above 500, the Detroit Lions, left on the Bills' schedule. That can all change, obviously, between now and the end of the season or now when the Bills play them. But just focusing in here on the next 3 games, realistically, the Bills, if they want that 1 seed, probably can stumble 1, maybe 2 more times this season. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, I haven't seen anything over the course of the last 6 weeks where if they get healthy, they can't run off the rest of the way and finish, 15-2? This Patriots team is it's got some spirit. Going on the road against the Rams and the Lions back-to-back is tough. But I also don't think that the Lions are necessarily the team that you see when they play the Jaguars, right? They're probably a little bit closer to the team that barely beat Houston, that, if you play well against Jared Goff and you scheme against him, that becomes a much more interesting game. I think the Bills and the Lions are – it's funny. I don't even think the Lions are, as good as they are. I know they're everybody's favorite team right now. But I have huge questions about Goff, and I have huge questions about that defense without Aiden Hutchinson once we get to the really important months. And so if I was power ranking the league right now, I'd probably put 3 to 4 AFC teams ahead of the Lions. And I know that probably sounds crazy to a lot of people, but they're still probably going to be underdogs. The Lions are the Lions going on the road. But if you look at the totality of this, and plus I think the Niners are the second hardest team left on their schedule. You're getting them at home and you're getting them off the bye when Sean McDermott is so dialed in and good. To me, the biggest thing is how do you maintain the drive, which I don't think they have a hard time doing. I think Sean does a good job in that department, but also stay healthy over this stretch, because that to me is the most important thing now. Get to that. I don't really even care where they wind up, because it doesn't look like the Baltimore Ravens are going to be able to catch the Pittsburgh Steelers. You've won on the road in Pittsburgh before. You've won on the road in Baltimore too, but the way that first one went, I don't know if you want to go back there, but I still think what we've seen over the last 6 games and the high points of Amari Cooper when he's in the lineup, this is a really tough team to deal with.
Yeah, Matt Perino, Syracuse Post-Standard. The Shout podcast is the Bills. The bye week is here, and then coming out of it, Matt, now, obviously we'll find more information about Kincaid and Coleman and certainly Spencer Brown. The one thing they've been teeing up here is the eventual return of Matt Milano. Matt, this isn't – it's not as easy as, hey, this was a guy who was an all-pro, let's plug him back in, is it? Because you have Dorian Williams – we don't know also that Matt Milano, what level he's going to be at. It's going to be over a calendar year since we've seen him in a regular season game.
No, it's a great point. And I asked Sean McDermott about that yesterday. Like, okay, you get him back, whenever that ends up being, he's on your active roster. Is it go be the Matt Milano that you were before and, go play a bunch of snaps? Or is it like you got to be careful with this and ramp him back up the right way? And he said something very interesting. He said that's obvious. They have to do right by Milano, right? Like get him back at a speed that he's comfortable with. But he's also got to be accountable to this defense that has played so well and the flow that they're in. To just throw a Matt Milano back in there, as good as he is, there's a disruption to that because now you'll potentially have maybe at the start a rotation between Dorian Williams and Matt Milano. You can get creative with when you get him on the field with 3 linebackers and maybe start to work him in a little bit more on run plays specifically because of his ability to shoot gaps and play against the run a little bit more consistently, I'd say, probably than what we've seen from Dorian Williams. Even though Dorian Williams has been really good this year, I still think that ceiling is Milano. And then you have to consider the guy hasn't played a legitimate football game since September last year, early October. So there's going to be a level of rust, I would imagine, just like the speed of the game and getting back in that department. So there's a lot to consider when getting him back in the lineup. But that's why I think opening the window when they did, and then maybe if you could activate him this next week, he doesn't have to play against San Francisco, but he's got to be practicing, right? Like he's got to be once you can get that red jersey off of him and get him as acclimated as possible, that's the big piece of it too. And they actually are sitting at 52 roster spots, players on the roster right now. I think they're holding out that spot for either him or Dwayne Carter's eligible to come back after the Chiefs game. So it'll be interesting to see how they manage the numbers here over the next couple of weeks. I would imagine Virgil, if Coleman's ready to come back after the bye, I'd imagine they try to get Virgil back to the practice squad and activate those 2 guys.
And Matt, another residual effect of the Bills beating the Chiefs in the way that they did, in the fashion they did, with Josh Allen being the hero and scoring that game-winning touchdown. The MVP conversation heats up here, and it'll only get louder and louder as the season comes to its conclusion. The debate between Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. Is it a debate? Because statistically, when you put the two side by side, it's Jackson. Does it come down to that, or does it come down to the team who finishes with the 1 seed? And if that's the case, does that matchup between the Bills and the Lions actually have some meat as well in terms of who the MVP of the league might be when it's all said and done?
Potentially. And I mean, I guess like if you're going off of recent years, last year is a great exercise in what ultimately gets you an MVP award, because Josh Allen's stats were dramatically better than Lamar's last year. And I made the argument that I thought he was probably the MVP, just knowing the production that he had and everything like that. But Lamar and the Baltimore Ravens were the 1 seed. And ultimately, although wins aren't necessarily a quarterback stat, they seem to be one of the most important stats when it comes to determining the most valuable player. And I think there's also another piece to all of this. Derrick Henry, if you put the Bills' offensive roster and the Ravens' offensive roster in a bucket and you pick out names and power rank them, you're going to start probably with Josh or Lamar, 1 or 2, in whichever order you have. Derrick Henry is going to be the next name that comes out of that list, and he's going to be pretty close to that tier. I don't think the Bills offensively have anybody that you put even close to that, as good as James Cook has been this season. So I think just from that perspective as well, I think Josh Allen is doing more with less. And I also think that the Bills are winning more games. And some of the losses, too, you think about the Browns, the Raiders for the Ravens. Like, I think that those are huge demerits for Lamar Jackson when you kind of putting these two guys side by side.
If you had to just kind of line up the teams, man, this will be the last one for me, just by their weakness, right? Their biggest weakness, their Achilles heel. For Baltimore, I would say it's their secondary. I don't know if Trey White is going to fix that at this point. They allow yards that would be a problem going up against a Kansas City or a Buffalo. If it's Kansas City, I don't like their offensive line. I heard about that going in. We saw it right there, and sure, we can give the Bills credit, but they've got to figure that out. What is Buffalo's biggest weakness, would you say, heading into the final stretch here?
I think it's a combination of like what we saw against Baltimore, to a lesser degree against Indianapolis, and it didn't matter because Flacco was just handing the ball back to them over and over again. It's a combination of explosive running plays allowed and how that can kind of change the course of the game, specifically when the offense is kind of grinding, maybe not totaling the kind of touchdowns they usually do. I mean, that game, the Bills offense just couldn't find the right notes to be able to score enough points. They scored, I think, 10. Most of it came, if not all, in the second half after the game was kind of already out of reach. So that, to me, is the way to try to beat the Bills, is get your run game going consistently. And as good as they played against Kansas City the other day, they didn't have Isaiah Pacheco, and Pacheco was really good in the divisional round game last year in the playoffs. So that's another aspect to this matchup where it's interesting, though, because I think the Bills, if you take that game and Josh Allen doesn't throw that interception and, maybe they end up going down and scoring a field goal, it's a much different feel to the game. It felt closer because of the dramatics late in the game, but I thought Buffalo outplayed them. They outgained them. They had less turnovers. It was a consistently better performance by the Bills. But if a team is able to run and force a couple explosives in that department, that's when the Bills are tested with their style of offense, the way that they want to play. They're going to rely and they're going to stay patient with their run game, even if it's not working early on in the game. And over the course of 60 minutes, they hope that it just wins out. And if a team gets up on you early, sometimes that's dangerous.
Matt, what are you and Ryan and the whole crew there at Syracuse Post-Standard working on here this week that we can check out the Shop podcast at Syracuse.com?
Yeah, it's going to be mostly quiet, especially at the website. We're recording a couple shows later tonight that will air Wednesday night in our usual Staples slot and then on Friday. And the cool thing is the Friday show, we're doing a new format every week where we call it 3 Big Questions. And Ryan asked me one. I ask him one, and we discuss, obviously. And then we bring on one of our insiders, our Shout insiders. They all get to put in questions. We pick out 1 or 2 every single week, and we actually bring them live on the show, on video. So, Gino, I don't know, buddy. All you got to do is become a Shout insider, and you can get on there real quick.
Oh, all right. Sign up right now.
Yeah, give him the short code, and he'll get after it right now.
Love it.
Enjoy your weekend here, Matt.
Thanks, guys. Enjoy your week.
You got it. There's Matt Perino covering the Buffalo Bills for the Syracuse Post-Standard, doing a great job here. Even during the bye week, the work doesn't stop.
No, of course not. We didn't even get to the conversation about the Jets, but it's like, whatever.
It's just keep pouring dirt on the Jets.
Little did we know there is going to be 2 bye weeks for the Bills.
Yeah, very good.
Just a quick note here, local sports story, because my phone was blowing up just now. We're the proud home of St. John Fisher Athletics. Paul Vosberg, the head coach since 1991, just announced his retirement for the football team.
Oh, wow.
Yep. So it's a team that went 3-7 this year. So time for a new start at Fisher, and congratulations to Coach Vos on, how many people stay in any place, in any profession that long, much less in football.
Yeah. Well, raise a glass. That's a hell of a run. Happy trails, Coach. And thanks for all you did for the community and for that program. We'll take a break and we'll come back. We've got more here in the sports. I want to talk a little bit more about that MVP race, because if statistics are a thing, the Lamar Jackson supporters have a pretty good case. I'll explain.
Okay. Talking more about Sean McDermott. Can coaches grow? Can we pinpoint things? And bring in one of the experts here and play you what's being said about Sean McDermott.
Busy 4 o'clock hour on deck. We've got Amherst head coach Mike Leone. We'll talk some fantasy football with Michael F. Florio as well. All on the way before 5 o'clock here on the Fan Rochester.
You're listening to the Sports Rochester, the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester, an Odyssey sports station. The Fan, Rochester, sports update.
More changes for the New York Jets. First, the head coach is out. Now it's the GM, Joe Douglas, fired today. Phil Savage, the former Browns GM, taking over on an interim basis. Buffalo Bills on the bye week. Sean McDermott talking about his plans.
Just try and get some rest, spend a little time with the family, and I think that's about it. Just kick back, unplug a little bit.
Yeah, wouldn't we all like that? The Bills taking on the Niners coming up on December the 1st. Amerks play tomorrow at Laval. We'll talk to head coach Michael Leone coming up later this hour here in the Sports Bar. Sabres out in L.A. tomorrow night. Longtime St. John Fisher football coach Paul Vosberg has announced his retirement. Coach Vos was with Fisher since 1991. Gene Battaglia, the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
I think it's the most balanced offense they've had since Josh Allen has been there. They can beat you multiple ways. This is the offense McDermott has wanted. He's wanted a more physical offense that can run the ball. That's why I say I think they know they've got to be better at that when they play the Chiefs the next time.
The bye week.
Mike Danger.
Once again, the Bills get over on the Chiefs in the regular season, so I think there's cautious optimism that in the postseason, if these two teams meet again,
They can win that game.
and I think Sean McDermott is beginning to believe.
Gene Battaglia.
The Bills at 9-2, Kansas City at 9-1. How do you assess the race for the top seed? Getting that extra week of rest, not having to deal with a wild card round, that's a big advantage. How would you assess this race now between Buffalo and Kansas City?
95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
We talked about it yesterday after the Bills get the win over Kansas City. Matt Perino, the Syracuse Post-Standard, stopped by last hour. He brought it up in a tweet from Mike Golick Jr. I knew that's where I saw it in my feed, the Matrix, meme. He's starting to believe. Sean McDermott actually believing and coaching with this belief that you have a weapon, an extraordinary weapon you shouldn't be afraid to deploy in Josh Allen, and it pays off. It's almost as if we're watching a coach now develop a sense of self-awareness and a different level of confidence. You can't call him conservative anymore.
No, but with that, how about going to somebody that was here and then went up to the national level? Our old friend Marcel Louis-Jacques, who, by the way, we had on Dolphin Week. I love that we have this relationship with Marcel, as he's a regular now on the ESPN's Around the Horn. And well, apparently Marcel listens to the Sports Bar.
Yeah.
The Bills win Sunday over Kansas City. And here's Marcel talking about that growth in Sean McDermott.
Buffalo, just me.
Tony, I see too many detractors saying that this was the Bills' Super Bowl. But like you said, we've seen them beat Kansas City 4 times now in the regular season.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't their Super Bowl. They knew that they could do this, but it was how they did it. When you look at their losses in the playoffs, it's not a talent discrepancy. It's a game management discrepancy. And Sean McDermott looked so much more convicted last night than he has in the postseason. When you look at the final drive before the first half ended, they run 3 minutes off the clock, kick a field goal, make sure Mahomes and Andy Reid, they have no shot at scoring before the end of the half. And then, of course, the 4th and 2 play. I know Tyler Bass has struggled this season, but conservative Sean would have kicked that field goal. This time around, he said, look, we got one of them ones too. Josh Allen is a unicorn in his own right. That play had a 1.2% chance of scoring, according to Next Gen Stats. But that's the beauty of Josh Allen. When he's got the ball in his hands, you can pump those numbers up, buddy, like Matthew McConaughey in Wolf of Wall Street. Pump those up, man. I am impressed by Sean McDermott's growth after last night.
Wow. All right. So, Marcel, listening to the Sports Bar. Here's the thing, Danger, and he says this again, and any Chiefs fan will wave their finger. Well, what about the postseason? I guess that's the final exam, right? That's the final exam, because do you, under the most pressure, revert to bad habits?
If you were to ask me right now, are these two teams going to find each other again in the postseason? Based on what we've seen just this last week, where the league is right now, I would say no. I would say somebody would surprise the Chiefs before the Bills could get to the Chiefs. I don't know that they're going to meet again in the postseason.
Well, let's examine that. Let's say, all right, the Chiefs, because of their schedule or whatever it is, or because the Bills might lose in Detroit, LA, whatever the combination is, like as a 1 seed, you would get either the 4 or the best wild card. All right, who might that? Oh. Baltimore or Pittsburgh is the best wild card. I'm not talking division winner. I'm talking the best team that didn't win their division.
Yep.
Going to Kansas City is
Kansas City's the 1 seed.
If Kansas City is the 1 seed, that would be even the Chargers as a wild card team danger going to Kansas City.
Right. Right now, if you look at how the league right now, I'm not saying a lot can happen between now and January, but right now, I don't think it's a lock that the Bills and Kansas City meet in the postseason. Furthermore, I feel like it might be more likely that the Bills would actually have to exercise some demons against the Ravens in the postseason, more likely than the Chiefs, based on just kind of what we've seen here.
But a lot would have to kind of go wrong right now for Buffalo if they were the 2 seed to fall down to the 3 and Baltimore to rise up, right? At least you'll be getting that game in Buffalo.
Yeah, it feels as if the Bills are almost a certainty to be the 1 or the 2. And they shouldn't dismiss Pittsburgh. They've had a great season up to this point. But I just look at that schedule, and I still think, okay, you're a Steeler fan. You know this is true. There's going to be one in there against the Browns or something's going to happen where it's like,
Well, or can we use the same sort of logic with Mike Tomlin? They're winning games. Let's see, Thursday night, this is the perfect kind of trappy game, right?
This is the kind of game, Steelers and Browns, where the Steelers play down to their competition, and it'll drive Steeler fans crazy, and they'll be like, why aren't we throttling this Browns team? And it'll be close, and you might even lose that game. So for as good a season as it's been up to this point for the Steelers, it does feel to me like the Bills are a lock to be the 1 or the 2. I don't know that I see a lot of movement outside of that. And with all of that being said, if Kansas City is the 1 or the 2, I don't know that we see Kansas City in the postseason. If the Bills see Kansas City in the postseason, I think it's more likely you end up seeing a team like Baltimore, which, in my opinion, is a little bit more scary than the Chiefs. You asked Matt Perino last hour, what's the Achilles heel of this Bills team? When you kind of look around the league, and you could say squarely at Baltimore and be like, yeah, your defense, your pass defense is last in the league. That's your weakness. For the Bills, to me, it's the physicality. It's the inconsistent physicality. They've been great the last 6 games, but I can't shake the image of them getting bull rushed against the Ravens in that one-sided loss.
Or Jonathan Taylor, la 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 la,
right,
la, la, la,
right,
right. You have Matt Milano coming back. That is a huge unknown danger. It really is, and I think Matt is spot on there. Okay, you're going to sprinkle him in, but by and large, his defense has exceeded expectation.
Yes,
I
think so.
Has,
and I would also say, let's see what the health situation of this team is as well, because we could sit here and say they're getting healthier. Well, injuries happen week in and week out, and you might get healthier in one spot, but then down the stretch, more guys fall off. The offensive line is something that I'm always knocking on wood over, because they've been so consistent for so long now, and even when Vandermark is in there, it's like, okay, you didn't really miss a beat, but how much will that affect them down the road? How healthy can they stay down the road as well? I think that's also a factor. And I also think you should buckle up and brace yourself here. We discussed this with Perino last hour, that this is going to be a slog week in and week out. Get ready to fight with Raven fans and Lamar Jackson supporters on debating the merits of the NFL's MVP, because with the Bills' win over the Chiefs on Sunday, Josh Allen vaulted himself to the favorite for the award. And it's not really something that supporters of Lamar Jackson like to see. And when I look at the numbers, I get their gripe, because statistically, Jackson is better than Allen in many key categories. Statistically, includes completion percentage, passing yards, touchdowns, rushing yards. Allen has more rushing TDs, and that's really about it. Meanwhile, in the NFC, the guy that could sneak in and make the debate irrelevant is Jared Goff. Imagine the Lions going 16-1 or 15-2, and they're the 1 seed in the NFC with around 35 points per game scored. Week 15 against the Bills could be more than a Super Bowl preview. Could also decide the league MVP.
It's really kind of a shame that the MVP has come down to just strictly the quarterbacks. Because, yes, what you said is all true, but let me point out something as well. What about Saquon Barkley? What has he meant for that Eagle team? He's had a ton of touchdowns siphoned off at the goal line here, which by their quarterback, which from a fantasy standpoint, that drives you nuts. He's already over 1,100 yards. The 1,000-yard mark doesn't mean anything, but in terms of a player moving from Team A to Team B, who would be the MVP if we just kind of eliminated all quarterbacks? Would it be Barkley?
Could make a case for Derrick Henry.
11 straight games with a touchdown. Well, with that, then, so why does Lamar get the credit if you can make a case for Henry?
Yeah, again, I with Lamar, statistically, it's a little eye-popping. He's having a good season statistically. The team isn't doing what the Bills have done. Their resume isn't as clean. Wins, I do think, matter. You could say, wins.
Oh, they are you kidding me? That's right up at the top.
Wins aren't a quarterback stat, Gene. But
yes, they are.
They may not be a quarterback stat, but winning is the minimum, albeit high standard. Quarterback wins are everything. They're everything. So it might come down to that game against the Lions when you're trying to decide who the more worthy MVP candidate is down the stretch.
Yeah, the other thing that's working against Josh Allen too, if you trip up and we get to the final 2 weeks and you can't catch the Chiefs. I mean, this could be the season. It's been a few years where, all right, the Bills are locked in as the 2 seed. All right, week 18, it's Mitchell Trubisky in Foxborough, or who knows? It could even be week 17 at that point. Mm-hmm. So I could see a scenario where, all right, that's not going to help your quarterback if you're kind of not playing those last 2 games and, when you're measuring stats and whatnot.
We welcome you into the Sports Bar. It's Danger and Battaglia. Glad you're with us and listening along. Appreciate it. Here locally at 95.7 FM, AM 950. You can hear us where we sound our best. The free-to-download Odyssey app or your smart device when you ask it to play 95.7 The Fan. We've got our stream up and rolling. Check out our YouTube channel. Like, subscribe. Don't forget to click that little bell icon and get notified whenever we go live, and leave a comment as well. You could put some wind in the sails. Also streaming on Twitch at The Fan Rochester. And you can get us on Elon's Twitter. That's X at The Fan Rochester as well. Coming up on Friday, it's another Friday Football Talk Live at Three Heads Brewing on Atlantic Avenue.
It's the Friday before Thanksgiving, not Black Friday. So start your holiday week with us. We will be out there, and we're also partnering with the Rochester Nighthawks. They're having the re-release of their hazy IPA, and I've heard some of the names that are going to be coming here at Danger. So players are going to be in attendance. So if you're a Nighthawk fan, what other sport can you actually kind of have a cold one right then and there with the players? So
pretty cool.
It was a fun time last year, and you and I are not going to be running out to call a high school game or anything like that at 6 o'clock. So we will have a cold one with you. Come on out to Three Heads, as some of these other beers we're going to be sampling too should be fantastic.
Yeah, the re-release of the Nighthawk Hazy IPA. Join us on Friday to grab a pint, and look for it at the Blue Cross Arena for all events and in stores on tap as well. Meet up with Nighthawk players. They'll be there from 5 until 6. Freddy's ROC serving up some delicious wood-fired pizza as well. We'll be at Three Heads Brewing, Atlantic Avenue, in the neighborhood of the arts. Friday Football Talk Live. That's 3 to 6 this coming Friday. We'll start the holiday season officially here on The Fan.
We can share a cold one and maybe a win or two.
Yeah, as hearing Dan Coates, maybe some other players locally will be showing up. So it is going to be a great time. And you know what? Bills won this week. You already won. It's a bye week. You can kind of relax and we can kind of just enjoy. I mean, if you're looking at that schedule too on Sunday, Danger, is there a game that you will be paying attention to? Certainly one I'm going to be paying attention to. Just, grab your popcorn. It's the one in the late afternoon window, 49ers and Packers. I mean, I haven't had a chance really to watch a Packer game front to back. I know you did last week, but, the next opponent for the Buffalo Bills will all be able to scout, because if this were another week, we'd be, if the 49ers are playing this week, we'd be kind of discussing, hey, what's wrong with this team? What's going on? And we'll come to some conclusions. I kind of want to just watch the Niners too and see what they're all about.
Yeah, I tell you, here's what I think will happen. I think the Niners will go into Lambeau and they'll beat Green Bay. And they'll make us all wonder, like, oh, boy, what Niners team are we getting? Are we getting the Niners team that choked against Seattle or the Niners team that went into Lambeau and beat Green Bay? And I'll tell you, Green Bay didn't look good against the Bears. Green Bay can be had. They're inconsistent. Jordan Love has been inconsistent. Red zone turnovers can't happen.
I think he's kind of banged up here at this point.
Can't happen. So that's an interesting one to me. Eagles-Rams, the Sunday night game, is an interesting one to me as well. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. And I want to see what Anthony Richardson looks like again against the Detroit Lions. Will the Lions defense exploit that quarterback and continue their role, or will Richardson? Because the Lions are going to be an interesting team to watch here down the stretch. Obviously, everybody has them as their favorite in the NFC, and they looked really, really good against a really, really bad team that's quit on their coach.
The Chiefs in Carolina. Any hope for the big upset? Chiefs are favored by 11. Secondary ticket price kind of indicates to me that Charlotte's going to be descended upon by Chief fans.
Oh,
probably.
for sure.
Yeah.
Good opportunity to see your favorite team outside of Arrowhead. We'll get into some of these Week 12 lines with PJ Glasser, the host of Send It In on the BetQL network. He joins us every Wednesday at 3:25.
I like Baltimore and against the Chargers on Monday.
Insider calls are presented by BetMGM. Go check out all the latest lines today on the BetMGM app. Let's get to Mike Leone, head coach of the Rochester Americans. Team is on the road, traveling to Laval with the Rocket on tap. We'll get a recap from Coach and some new additions and a couple of subtractions to talk about as well as far as his roster is concerned. We talk some Amherst hockey next on The Fan.
update.
Well, this just in, the Boston Bruins firing their head coach, Jim Montgomery. He's not the only coach to get let go today, or the only executive, I should say. GM Joe Douglas let go by the New York Jets. Phil Savage, the former Browns GM, taking over on an interim basis. As for the Buffalo Bills, sitting pretty at 9-2. Head coach Sean McDermott on what is after the bye.
A little bit of it is rest. I think a little bit of it is, having a chance to do some self-scouting and evaluation of what we do and how we do things, and fundamentals as well. I think the other part is, making sure, we put together a good game plan for when the players return as well.
Amherst hockey tomorrow night playing at Laval. We'll talk to head coach Michael Leone coming up next year in the Sports Bar. Longtime St. John Fisher football coach Paul Vosberg announcing his retirement. Gene Battaglia on the Sports Leader, the Fan, Rochester.
The beer is cold and the wings are hot. You're in the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia on the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
Always a treat when we can get caught up with Rochester Americans head coach Michael Leone, his team on the way to Laval right now for a matchup against the Rocket. That's coming up tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. You'll be able to hear the action on your proud home of Rochester Americans hockey, 95.7 The Fan. Coach, good to have you on with us. How's the road treating you, and how are the boys holding up?
Well, the coaches are on one bus. They have their own bus. We actually have two buses, so it's been a long ride, about a 6-hour ride. We got about 45 minutes to go, so go have a nice dinner tonight and get ready for tomorrow.
Coach, you pick up half the points that were available. Both taking teams. But is it are you a glass half full, glass half empty guy when you're looking at the past weekend here?
Yeah, I think when you look at even going back to last Wednesday, they're the top two teams in our division. We went to overtime one game. The second game was a 2-1, two empty netters, and we went to overtime. Again, I actually thought we played really well. We could easily, if you find a way to win in overtime, both those games, you're 2-1 in the week, and instead of 0-1-2. But I thought we played well, and if we keep playing like we have been, especially away from the puck, we're going to win a lot more games. I think it's when you play really good teams like that, the margin for error is really small, and we didn't score a power play goal. I think that hurt us a bit in the momentum, but overall, I really liked our game. We weren't on the right side of it, but we played well.
Michael Leone, Rochester Americans head coach, joining us in the Sports Bar. It's Danger and Battaglia. Coach, last week, I'm sure you talked about this with Gene and with Timmy. I'm curious to see if we can get an update on your goaltender, Felix Sandstrom, from that hit against Hartford from a couple of Friday nights ago now.
Yeah, he's healthy. He actually played in Toronto on Sunday. He played really well. Gave up 2 goals. One was in overtime, and had a really, really good game with us. So he's back healthy.
So how do you manage this now? It's a good problem to have. Devin Levi. I would assume Devin Levi goes in between the pipes tomorrow night. Correct, Coach?
Yep, he'll be in that tomorrow.
So how do you manage this now with Hauser and also with Sandstrom?
I think it's one of those situations we'll, I think, reevaluate after the weekend. All 3 goalies have done a really good job for us. Actually, House is under the weather right now. He actually has kind of like a bug going around, so he won't be with us on this trip. But I think we'll have a better feel and understanding after the weekend.
When you get to this point of the season, you have some injuries up with Buffalo. The call-ups are an inevitability, and you kind of knew that this was how it was going to be if you're going to be the coach of an AHL team. So how are you prepared here to deal with the absences of a Kulik and a Roseanne since they got the call up to Buffalo, Coach?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where we have really, really good depth, and I think it's a next man up mentality, and just everybody has to be ready to go to play the game. It happens to every team in the league where you're going to have guys getting called up and down. And my first time going through it, is pretty crazy, but we believe in our group and the guys that we have, and I'm really proud of the guys. The way the first 15 games we've had a chance to win. 14 of them, the one game in Wilkes got away from us, but we've been doing a really good job playing consistent winning hockey.
What is your message to Devin Levi, a player that maybe he thought his time in Rochester was up, but circumstance, he wasn't getting the ice time up in Buffalo. So how do you view this situation? I would think that maybe play so well here, make it difficult to keep him down here.
Yeah, I think it's just important for Devin you have to be where your feet are. It's how you respond to it. I think he's really being around him talked to him yesterday on the phone, and then him coming into practice. I think he's really excited to be here. You could see it on, just how he interacts with the players, and I think he's just really excited to play. He had a really good day at practice, and there's two ways you handle it. You could feel sorry for yourself or respond and do the best you can to help us win hockey games, and I think that's his mentality.
Coach, it's your third time facing Laval in the last 4 games here, so you're getting familiar with the Rocket. I know that you and your team aren't going to look beyond tomorrow night's game, but we look at the calendar and we look at you coming back home this weekend, Friday. Friday, it is the hated Hershey Bears, so I'm just curious as to what you know about your opponent here this weekend, and we're familiar with Utica, obviously, from the games that we've seen of them so far this season as well.
Yeah, no, they're really, obviously, what they've done the last couple of years speaks for itself. They're a really good team. They defend really well. They have a lot of older veteran players that are really good players and then have played a lot of pro hockey. They have a really good goalie. There's a reason why they are where they are, and it'll be a really good test for our group, and we're excited about the week ahead of us.
6 hours on a bus is not fun, Coach. When you were in juniors, what was your longest trip?
13. Yeah.
13. Well, then this is a walk in the park for you. This is no big deal.
Yeah, this is not too bad. And we always we leave the day before, so which is nice. Before we left the day of game a lot of times, not for the 13-hour one, but most of the time we're leaving the day of the game.
What's the menu for tonight? You're talking about getting a good meal before you have the game tomorrow night.
You know what? I'm not sure where we're going, but I'm sure it'll be a good one. Anthony Gady, our hockey ops guy, does a really good job of finding places to go, so I'm sure he'll have a good one.
Friday night, that is going to be a place. So we're going to be out with the Nighthawks, Coach. We're doing a live show at Three Heads Brewing. But for anybody that wants to get a head start and then go there and then head on over to the Amerks afterward, that's going to be a fantastic evening of hockey taking on those Hershey Bears.
Yeah, no, it'll be really exciting for a group. It's a lot of respect for their team and their staff, and like I said, what they've done is really hard to do at the professional level. So I think we're excited, not just tomorrow night's game, but excited to compete against a really good opponent Friday night as well.
Are you a believer in measuring stick games?
Yeah, I am. I think we looked at this, this last week of to see where our group was at, and I thought, we did a lot of good things. Like I said, we weren't on the right side of it, but I think it was a good learning experience too for a group of playing in those games where you're going to play in a lot of tight games against really good teams, and I think it was really good for us.
Well, good luck tomorrow night against Laval. I'm not sure if it's Don or Andrew on the call, but we'll have the game tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. Coach, thanks for your time. Let's do this again next week.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a good one.
You got it. There he is, head coach Mike Leone, the Rochester Americans. Yeah, Laval, 3 out of the last 4 games, and you've got them again tomorrow night, 7 o'clock from Laval. You'll be able to hear that action on the Fan Rochester with our coverage here in every game on the Fan Rochester, your home of Rochester Americans hockey.
Let me tell me which of these is not like the other. Ready? Okay. Wins here in the North Division. Laval is first with 12. Talking just regulation, right? Cleveland with 10. Toronto with 8. Syracuse with 7. Rochester with 7. Belleville with 6. Utica with 0.
Yeah.
0-10-1. Didn't want to put him on the spot, right? But Saturday, got to win that.
Yeah.
You don't want to give those Jamos their first win
That's
of the
right.
season.
That's right. And for what it's worth, Hershey's a measuring stick. If that's the cream of the league, let's see how you stack up against them. I would imagine that Friday night is going to be a lot of fun at Blue Cross Arena with Hershey coming in and the opportunity to see how these Amherst measure up to a really, really good, consistent program.
Love the fact that 2 Friday nights ago, that Hartford game, 9,000 came out.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so, like, can you get close to that these next 2 games?
Hey, I'm telling you, man, going downtown and going to the arena, whether you're going to Sebastian Maniscalco, an Amherst game, a Nighthawks game, it's one of the few times where you can walk around Rochester and it feels like you're in a major league city. It feels like you're downtown Chicago, downtown Detroit, downtown Cleveland, whatever it is. Take advantage of it, man. Don't take it for granted. We have some great entertainment happening, whether you're into the Nighthawks, whether you're into the Amherst, and I would say the same thing about, Innovative Field in the summertime. It's kind of cool that we have, yes, we're a minor league town, but don't let that deter you from going out and enjoying some sports entertainment. It's a good time.
You got to play Devin Levi Friday night, right?
I would think so.
Yeah.
I would think so. Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting thing to monitor here, how they manage through the 3 goaltender situation.
Oh, I think it's easy. I'm sorry to Michael Hauser, but you got to go to Jacksonville. No, I'm being honest. It's like that's the only way out here.
The only thing I would say to that is there a value to having that veteran guy around Levi? Is there something to having the old guy mentoring the young guy?
Who's the better at that? Is it Sandstrom or are you? Well, I don't know if you're releasing Sandstrom.
These are the decisions up to the staff, obviously. But it'll be interesting to see how that all shakes out. And seeing Devin Levi back at the AHL level, he just needs the reps, man. Just get him the reps. Let him get peppered. Let him make the saves that he can make here. Because at the NHL level, it felt like this year he was overwhelmed. It just felt like it was a little too big for him. Not to say that he's never going back up. I think he will. I think he'll be just fine for the organization. But now, when you need him on the ice to get better, this is the move. And, boy, if he's out there Friday night against Hershey, again, another great test. Amherst hockey here on the Fan Rochester against Laval tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. And every game here on your home for Rochester Americans hockey, 95.7 The Fan.
Yeah. Danger, we did have, mentioned this in the update before we get to Michael F. Florio, a little bit of breaking news.
Breaking news in the sports bar.
Ow! 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 It really hit me. I didn't know it was coming back that far.
I compare the Sabres to other organizations like last year where you could see, ooh, this wasn't right. Oh, but we really like Don Granato. And then it's too late now. And then you end up making the move at the end of the year. They don't wait in Boston. Jim Montgomery, he's out. Assistant coach Joe Sacco taking over the Boston Bruins.
The word on the street is that Sacco is looking for redemption. I think his last head coaching opportunity was in Denver a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
And with Montgomery, man, it feels like the Bruins just kind of, like his message just kind of wore thin, that they were just done with him. Not a great start for Boston, certainly below expectation.
Yeah, the Bruins 31st in goals allowed a game, 32nd on the power play, 25th on the penalty kill. This is Boston?
That's right. That's right. Hey.
Taking the most penalties in the league?
Take advantage. If you're the Sabres, try to take advantage. I mean, there's a handful of teams in the East that have been constants through the drought era here for the Sabres. And if one of them slips or a couple of them slip, you have to take advantage. Don't let another team rise up and take that slot away from you.
It was Jeremy and Joe, WGR, that had this stat, and it to me, it's mind-blowing. Since 2017, Danger. Now, you got to push the COVID year aside where everybody but the Sabres made the postseason. In that division, it's been the same teams every single year making the postseason. It's Boston, it's Toronto, it's Florida, and it's also Tampa Bay. And put them in one order and not making it in Detroit, Ottawa, Buffalo. Thanks for coming.
Gross.
There's no parity.
Need to shake it up a little bit. Let's get to Michael F. Florio from NFL Network. We'll set your Week 12 fantasy football lineups. We'll talk that Week 12 waiver wire as well. I want to get his take on MVS in New Orleans. Gino, you brought that up. I think that's something interesting to discuss with F. And I also think there's something about the sabotage drop at this point of the season. We'll explain what that is.
Yeah, what is the sabotage
with
drop?
Michael F. Florio from NFL Network next on The Fan.
Welcome back to We the Hobby. You know what time it is? A little something special today. Oh, Nick. Is that a corn? That ain't no corn. What? That's a super corn! Oh, wow!
Visit us at 23 Arlington Street in Rochester.
All right, it's time to set your Week 12 waivers. You know, make your claims for your fantasy football team. Get a win in Week 12, which gets underway on Thursday. Michael F. Florio, NFL Network. Bills fans stopping by the sports bar with Danger and Battaglia. 9-2 heading into the bye. We're feeling good about that, Mike. I wanted to I wanted to run a concept by you that you've probably heard before. I've heard it, for years now, and I just think it's hilarious because we've come to the time of year where the sabotage drop may be in play. Tell everybody what the sabotage drop is, the players that you think in 2024 would fit the definition of a sabotage drop.
So you're talking about someone that you drop so that someone else in your league could pick up and go on a run?
No, somebody else will pick up, and they'll have to deal with the headache that is Jalen Waddle, as an example.
Oh, yes, that is a Jalen Waddle, Deontay Johnson, Michael Pittman Jr., Nick Chubb, all of these big-name players who you see the name and you're like, oh, this guy must be a stud, or you just think back to when they were a stud. Names are not what we want in fantasy football. We want production, but it's a lot like Patrick Mahomes early in the season, right? Like, everyone was like, he's Patrick Mahomes, I got to start him, but he was giving you, Gardner Minshew type fantasy numbers. So those are the perfect sabotage players, the ones you want to drop, the big names that someone will be like, why is Jalen Waddle on waivers? And then they add him and they get 6 points and they're like, that's exactly why he was on the waiver wire.
So, Mike, one player that probably is unavailable, but is this guy real or not? I don't think you would want him in a PPR league, but we saw him up close and personal here in Rochester, that being MVS. It was one practice, Danger, and like, oh, that's why Marquez Valdez-Scantling is still in this league. He got right behind the Bills' defense. It didn't work out in Buffalo, but here he is. Last 2 games, 3 touchdowns, all on long plays for the Saints. Is this a worthy pickup, or was that just kind of the flash in the pan? You don't want to be chasing something here.
No, I think he is worth picking up, and you could potentially sneak one by this week because they're on bye this week, the Saints. So when you go to your waiver wire list, he's not going to be one of the top names because they're usually sorted by projections for that week or points scored on the year. So you might be able to get him for cheaper than you anticipate. But I do think he's worth picking up because, to me, he is the new Rashid Shaheed in that Saints offense. And if you remember to what Rashid Shaheed has been this year and last year with Derek Carr, very boomer bust. The floor is like 2-3 fantasy points, but the ceiling is high enough where it could win you the week. So especially if you're one of these teams dealing with injuries or heading into the play, like as we get closer and closer to the playoffs, if you're one of the underdogs in your league, he is the type of player that you could throw in your flex. And yeah, potentially you might not get any points, but if he hits, he's going to give you something like 20, 25 points. That is a league-altering type performance. So I wouldn't say just pick him up and straight start him over all your wide receivers. But if you've been struggling with flex spot or something like that all year, he is the type of player that I like because the floor might be what you've already kind of been getting from that spot, but the ceiling is the type of performance that could win you a week.
We'll get to Week 12 starting Thursday with the Browns hosting the Steelers, and I wanted to get your preview of this game because I feel like it's the kind of game that you see the Steelers, especially after a big win against Baltimore, kind of play down to the level of their competition. Could this be a little bit closer, more competitive, and maybe more fruitful for fantasy purposes on Thursday?
It definitely can be closer and more competitive because not only did you say like short week and coming off of a big upset win for the Steelers, but these are two teams that know each other extremely well. They are two teams that have a lot of talent on defense, even if the Browns haven't played like it all year. So for fantasy purposes, from the Steelers, George Pickens is a must-start option right now. Najee Harris is in play with 6 teams on bye, and given the matchup. Outside of those two, you're getting to more fringe options, I would say, on the Steelers. Like, I would try to get away from Russell Wilson potentially this week. And then on the Browns side, I don't love Jameis Winston because of the matchup. I think there's other quarterbacks that I like to stream more this week than he does than Jameis Winston. But Winston has elevated all of those Browns pass catchers. They're all averaging around 10 targets per game since he has become the starter. We've seen Cedric Tillman go off. We've seen Jerry Jeudy go off, and we've seen Elijah Moore be a safe option. So those 3 are definitely in play as bye-week replacements or injury replacements, something along those lines. I'm going to avoid Nick Chubb
but I do think David Njoku is in play as well.
All right, good. You brought up Njoku. That's where I was going to go with you next, because it feels like Njoku, since coming back from his injury, and now with Jameis, has kind of elevated himself into the upper tier there of tight ends in fantasy.
Yeah, he is awesome, and he was someone that I loved last season. I really liked taking him in drafts this year because when you watch him play or you look at his stats, either way, he jumps out as like, this guy is a really good tight end at the NFL level. It turns out all he needs is a competent quarterback, which Jameis Winston is and Deshaun Watson wasn't. So if you have David Njoku, and I know some people were even able to get him off the waiver wire because, like you said, slow starts and some injuries. But if you have Njoku, he's pretty much reaching that. You just start him each week and don't even think twice about it.
Michael F. Florio, NFL Network fantasy expert, our guest here in the Sports Bar. Gross football last night we had to watch. We're just, all right, for the Cowboys. Do we remember this game for the sheet metal? Do we remember it for the double fumble? Next Monday night, we get a decent matchup. We get the Ravens and the Chargers, and we look at the Ravens, and, okay, they have a weakness. Their secondary is not very good. They give up yards. But my question is, if I'm looking at the waiver wire, let me run two names past you, and just if you need a spot start with all these players on bye this week. Quentin Johnson of the Chargers, or look, I forgot Will Dissly is now with the Chargers, and he's put up some numbers here in recent weeks. What's your advice about this matchup, Michael?
I think both of those guys are in play as streaming options this week. I think Ladd McConkey is a strong start. Justin Herbert is a strong start for exactly the reason you said. The Ravens' weakness is their secondary, and especially with wide receivers. They've allowed the most yards, touchdowns, fantasy points to the wide receiver position this year. Last week, Ladd McConkey had a career game. But what goes under the radar, Quentin Johnston, who has been playing great as of late, they both had a 32% first read share. And the week prior to that, Will Dissly was third in the NFL in first read share. So those three have been heavily involved for the passing attack. And the Ravens have struggled against receivers and tight ends. So, like, you're not starting Will Dissly over, like, Brock Bowers or something like that. But if you need a streaming tight end, and with 6 teams on bye in the state of the tight end position, he is one I like a lot this week. And if you need a streaming wide, like, I don't even think Quentin Johnson is a streaming option. I think he should be viewed higher than that. But I say that as someone who liked him as a prospect coming out of college and not as one of these people who are online doubting every touchdown he scores, because there is a big hive of people who are anti-Quentin Johnson right now.
Mike, what about the Broncos? They keep winning games, and if you're trying, I guess good luck if you're trying to figure out who Sean Payton sees as the hot hand in that backfield. Is there any production to be found out of the three-headed backfield of the Denver Broncos?
If I had to take a shot on one, I would go with Javonte Williams, because I know 2 weeks ago he kind of disappeared, but outside of that game, he has largely been the lead runner for them, and he is the one that Sean Payton seems to trust the most in the passing game. But I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, it's figuring out who Sean Payton trusts each week is a game that I'm not interested in playing. He said for weeks he was going to get Audric Estime more involved. Then he finally gives him a bunch of touches. Estime looks pretty good. And then last week, his volume was not great, but it was even worse than it appears, because most of his touches came in the second half of a game where they were leading comfortably. So I don't know if you could trust him. I'm trying my hardest to wash my hands clean of that backfield. To me, with the Broncos, Bo Nix, Cortland Sutton, those and the defense, those are the ones you could start and with confidence.
We saw one of the unexpected things. I guess we shouldn't say unexpected. It's the Jets after all. But the Colts going in and picking up the W. And you have Anthony Richardson redeeming himself a little bit. Well, now they get Detroit at home. So, I mean, from the Colts standpoint, you're playing Jonathan Taylor. But is there something to be said for, well, you know, Detroit's going to put up points. Ergo, Indianapolis has to move that football and point. Or is this just a matchup from a Colts standpoint you want to stay away from altogether, Michael?
For me, it's more of that, because I think Josh Downs is in play. He has seen enough volume weekly and been productive enough where I think you could start him. But, yeah, Michael Pittman I'm done with, Alec Pierce. And Anthony Richardson is the one that's interesting this week, because we saw the upside. Even when he was playing poorly, this was the upside that he brings and that we know that he has, and we're finally seeing it. But that being said, one game doesn't take away from the fact that the floor still is very low. And while the Lions, like you said, they're always winning by so much, so they have allowed a lot of passing yards. They're tied with the Bears for fewest passing touchdowns allowed in the NFL this year. They're tough against the run. They're tough on screen passes. So because of that, paired with how the floor is with Anthony Richardson, I ideally would try to get away. But I think a lot of people are going to see what he did last week and see the Lions matchup and be like, oh, this is a week to start him. It kind of feels like a trap to me, though.
Michael, I know that from the preseason or from draft season, you and I were simpatico in our love for one Isaiah Pacheco. And to see Pacheco go down to that injury earlier this season, but to hear that he could be back in time for this tasty matchup in Carolina this weekend, what are we hearing about Pacheco's return? And if he is playing, are you willing to take the shot and give him a start in that backfield?
I am. It seems like he has a good chance to return this week. They said they got to see how he looks in practice, but every report is that, or was coming into this week, was that like this is the week he's going to return. I am expecting it to be more of a split because Kareem Hunt has been serviceable. Like he's not explosive or anything, but he's been effective for the Chiefs. So I would anticipate it looking something like a split, maybe even 60-40 Kareem Hunt side, but I'm still going to guess like closer to 50-50, something like that. But like you said, the best possible matchup a running back could have against the Panthers. This is a game where the Chiefs could be leading by numerous scores, which means they could run the ball even more than they usually do, which is already at a very high rate. So because of the matchup, I think both Pacheco and Kareem Hunt are in play. I value them more as like RB2s, and even Pacheco maybe in the flex range because we're not sure of his workload. But unless we hear like, oh, he's on a snap count, he's only going to get like 15 snaps, 20 snaps, something like that, I think he's in play this week.
All right, one more waiver question I got to ask for you because count me in this group here. And you mentioned, and this brings the interview full circle because we asked you about MVS. There's another guy in that Saints offense. Because how many times have I had Taysom Hill on the bench? Explosion! There he goes. Oh, and then they put him in the next week, and he gets one carry for 2 yards. What's your advice with Taysom Hill? Because I would imagine he's available in a lot of leagues, Michael.
It's exactly what you just said. You pick him up, but understand that is what Taysom Hill is. Like he had a stretch at the end of last season where it was like 4 or 5 weeks in a row he had scored double figures, and a couple of them were over 20, and it was like, all right, he's finally reached the point where we could trust Taysom Hill, and then he put up like 0 points the next week. And it's going to drive you mad, but the usage is simply too good to get away from. 3 rushing touchdowns last week, but even bigger than that, 10 targets, 8 catches. They are using him as a tight end at times. They are letting him pass the ball. They're really using him in the passing game as an extension of the run game. He is their short yards runner. So the upside is too high at the thinnest position in the game that I do believe you want Taysom Hill, especially if you've been playing the streaming game week to week or something like that at tight end, because then you could plug him in. And, yeah, the floor might be low, but there's no tight end on the waiver wire that bring a higher ceiling than Taysom Hill. So the way he was used, he's not – look, that's his career game. You're not going to get that again, 41.5 points. But – we've seen a lot of big days out of Taysom Hill, so he is definitely someone I'm interested in picking up this week.
Mike, when can we check you out on NFL Network this week? What do you got cooking?
Yeah, I'll be on Fantasy Live the rest of the week, especially tomorrow, big day on the show, having some fun with Tommy DeVito being back.
Hey!
Insiders. Hey! Yeah, Insiders, rotoballer.com, Florio's Football Show podcast. And if you want it all in one place, Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, at Michael F. Florio.
We got to get you up here for January, Michael. Bills playoff football. What do you think? We got to get your credential. You can hang out Buffalo,
Works
Rochester.
for NFL Network. He can get his own damn credential. Florio, I want a credential from you when you come to Buffalo. Can you make that happen for me?
I have no idea. I've yet to be there, but I would try. Look, I was trying so hard not to get sucked into if we beat the Chiefs in the regular season, it means we could beat them in the playoffs. But, like, the way they beat them is very different than any time that we've beaten them in the past. So I'm starting to get sucked in a little bit, and I'm fearful of that.
No, it's what we've been discussing. Sean McDermott, delivering he grew. Like, would you not say, like, in years past, does he go for it on 4th and 2, or is he sending out the field goal unit there, Michael?
He's sending out the field goal unit, going up 5. And the thing is, if that's how they won, like they go up 5, they hold the Chiefs, I would not feel as confident as I did right now. It's the fact that they took it from them. They made a statement. They beat them by 2 scores. First team to score 30 against them in 2 years. Dominated the time of possession, won the penalty battle, won the turnover, outran them, outpassed them, shut down Travis Kelce. He was nowhere to be found. He was on a milk carton. It's just different than past wins against the Chiefs. So naturally, I'm doing what I told myself not to do, and I'm getting sucked in.
Mike, it's great hearing your voice, man. Let's do it again next week, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Likewise, and go Bills.
Thank you, Michael.
Michael F. Florio, NFL Network, talking some fantasy football, getting those Week 12 waiver claims set to get you a win this weekend. Shall we play Who's Hot and Who's Cold in fantasy football, Gino?
Oh, yeah, like who's hot and who's cold in fantasy football. How about MVS?
Yeah.
Who would have thought that? 3 catches for touchdowns that went for long, and maybe you can pick him up and put him on the end. And who's cold? I'm going to go with the guy that we were excited about, but now ice cold. You can't pick him up. You can't play him. Audric Estime of the Denver Broncos. No touches in that first half.
Yeah, like we were talking with Florio just now. I mean, good luck trying to decide who the hot hand is going to be in that offense. If you're trying to live inside of Sean Payton's brain and to pick his brain, I wish you best of luck in that in Denver. Who's hot, who's cold in fantasy football? It's brought to you by Airquip Heating and Air Conditioning. It's fun and challenging to know when to start a player that's heating up or bench one who's cooling off. It's not fun to be too cold or too hot in your home or business. Make the best lineup call you can and call Airquip today.
Yeah, we've got happy hour coming up next. Are we having a special guest in happy hour?
It's a very special anniversary in the sports bar, and we'll explain why. And the New York Jets continue to be the New York Jets. They've fired their GM. He's going to be fine. Will the team be fine? We'll get into all of that with happy hour next, and we have time for your calls if you want to pull up a stool. That number is 585-866-4FAN, 866-4326.
9BF Rochester, the sports leader. 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan, Rochester. An Odyssey sports station. The Fan, Rochester. Sports update.
More firings for the New York Jets today. They part with GM Joe Douglas. Phil Savage, the former Browns GM, takes over on an interim basis. As for the Bills, they're at 9-2. It's on to the bye. Sean McDermott asked about his plans.
Just try and get some rest, spend a little time with the family, and I think that's about it. Just kick back, unplug a little bit.
The Bruins have fired head coach Jim Montgomery, assistant coach Joe Sacco taking over. Sabres on the road tomorrow night. They're in Los Angeles. The Amerks tomorrow playing against Laval on the road. Our coverage will begin at 7 o'clock. Longtime St. John Fisher football coach Paul Vosberg has announced his retirement. Coach Vos had been with the Cardinals since the year 1991. Gene Battaglia, the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
I think it's the most balanced offense they've had since Josh Allen has been there. They can beat you multiple ways. This is the offense McDermott has wanted. He's wanted a more physical offense that can run the ball. That's why I say I think they know they've got to be better at that when they play the Chiefs the next time.
The bye week.
Mike Danger.
Once again, the Bills get over on the Chiefs in the regular season, so I think there's cautious optimism that in the postseason, if these two teams meet again,
they can win that game.
And I think Sean McDermott is beginning to believe.
Gene Battaglia.
The Bills at 9-2, Kansas City at 9-1. How do you assess the race for the top seed? Getting that extra week of rest, not having to deal with a wild card round, that's a big advantage. How would you assess this race now between Buffalo and Kansas City?
95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
Welcome to Happy Hour, and thanks for joining us here on the Sports Bar. It's Danger and Battaglia. Appreciate you stopping by. If you're listening in the free-to-download Odyssey app, maybe you're checking out the stream on our YouTube channel at The Fan Rochester. Like, subscribe, click that little bell for notifications. Or if you're checking out the stream on Twitch at The Fan Rochester. Today in the Sports Bar is a legendary day, an anniversary that we are celebrating today here in the Sports Bar.
I can't believe how quickly 7 years can go by here, because you think of where the Bills are now, and we are legitimately talking about one seed. And if we're talking about one seed, we're talking about a team that has a chance to play for a championship.
That's right.
That wasn't the case 7 years ago.
7 years ago, Sean McDermott's first year. This is a game I remember very vividly. I remember going to Orchard Park. I had friends in town from out of town, from the area originally, that moved away, and they're like, we're coming back, and we want to go to a Bills game. And we go and we watch the Bills take on the New Orleans Saints. And the Bills at this time, I think, were right around a 500 team. And they were farting around at this time of the season. But they didn't look dominant. There was missing pieces everywhere. A piece here, a piece there. Nothing really in terms of any sort of
team
cohesion.
Cap hell.
Yes.
Nobody was really expecting everything. But that loss was as bad. They got run over.
It was ugly.
They were inept. And then there's some naked guy running on the field at the end of it. So,
Kamara basically doing whatever he wanted to do. Sean Payton absolutely outclassing Sean McDermott. And more than anything, Tyrod Taylor was atrocious in that game against the Saints. It was a dark, cloudy, gloomy, overcast, sprinkling, just a dank day. And everybody's mood was sour until they pulled Tyrod and brought in Nathan Peterman for mop-up duty in a game that was out of hand. They weren't winning that game.
They score a touchdown. Yay. Fireworks.
So you fast forward a couple of days, and Sean McDermott's speaking to the media, and he makes an announcement. His announcement is that Nathan Peterman will be starting the Bills' next game when they travel to Los Angeles to take on the Chargers. They're going to play in the soccer stadium. This is before SoFi was even open. And one man in particular, a coworker of ours, a guy named Chris, whose office was right next door to mine, big Bills fan. And if you follow this team, you have a Bills fan in your life who is like Chris, who views the team and is an eternal optimist, views it through rose-colored glasses all the time, and and they will always believe that the best will come for their beloved Buffalo Bills. And so when this move was made Gino, I think both you and I kind of recognize Nathan Peterman all along for what he is. He's a guy that they drafted, in the 5th round, 6th round, late round draft pick?
Yeah, 5th round. What are we doing? And we were trying to find the comp because you've had other guys go in because of injury. This was because of a coach's decision. Like, wait a second. He's not ready for this. This is bad. This is a head coach no, we were questioning Sean McDermott as a head coach with this decision. We predicted what would happen.
Chris came into my office, and he shared his enthusiasm and said, hey, dude, do me a favor. We're on the air at 3 o'clock. Just poke your head down in the studio. Come on in and share your thoughts on this decision by Sean McDermott.
This is a masterstroke by McDermott.
Anything more than what Tyrod did last week, I would consider thriving for a Buffalo Bills quarterback.
Then that should be Peterman's stats after the first quarter.
Peterman is going to make mistakes.
He might not make it out of the first half.
I have been waiting since week 1, and I think that Peterman, from everything we've seen in preseason and in the little bit in New Orleans, I think he's the man.
Dom, I'm warning you.
You watch, Gene.
You are crazy. Why can't it be us? Dude, you're going to be so disappointed.
I'm not.
Monday.
There is no way I'm going to be disappointed Monday.
He was disappointed Monday. And a legend was born.
Legend was born. And from that point on, we didn't call him Chris. This is what friends do, right? We just called him, hey, Masterstroke.
Yeah.
That was a Masterstroke. And we welcome in to the sports bar, the one and only, on this anniversary, now living in Florida.
Happy anniversary, Masterstroke.
Thank you, guys. It brings a tear to my eye to hear that when you replay and set the stage for that. I actually remember the excitement I had, Danger, when I did come into your office that day, and I look back on it now and think of how crazy it is, how far we've come, like you said, in 7 years, right?
Yeah, it is. It is a little bit remarkable, and not only as an organization, but as a head coach. Like, think about Sean McDermott and the audacity to make that decision as a rookie head coach versus the Sean McDermott that we just saw against Kansas City on Sunday. Really, kind of believing in the weapons that he has, showing a little bit of trust and a little bit of self-awareness there, and knowing, hey, if you're going to beat the Chiefs, you can't take your foot off the gas.
I agree. It's amazing, and I don't know how you guys felt when he decided to go for it, but I didn't. When it became 4th and 2, I knew that he had to go, and I think he learned enough from the 13 seconds and every other thing that's happened to the Bills in the playoffs with the Chiefs that, like he said at the end of the game when he was interviewed, you can't give Mahomes another chance, and it's great that it worked out. And listen, we got a quarterback that puts people on his shoulders, including, the entire team and the fan base. And there's no way he was going to be stopped from getting a first down, let alone a touchdown. And it feels pretty good after all the suffering we've been through with Peterman and Tyrod and the 15 quarterbacks after Jim Kelly right up to that point, to know that, like, we may have the top guy in the league, if not arguably the top 2.
Masterstroke, our guest here, as he is now down in Florida. And for anybody that might be new to the show, where that one take you had about the Peterman game was bad, but the thing that was remarkable, Danger, was that it was bad take after bad take after bad take after bad prediction. You were just on a roll over the years here, Chris.
Yeah, we'll never forget your Super Bowl prediction when it was the Rams and former Bills head coach Wade Phillips as the defensive coordinator against those hated New England Patriots.
I do have faith that Wade Phillips, the defensive coordinator for the Rams, will find a way to take some pieces of Brady's arsenal out of the game. I would be shocked right now if Edelman had a good game in the Super Bowl. I think Phillips is smart enough to take him out, and I don't think he's going to be a factor. The one thing I do like, by the way, and I will say this, I know there's a lot of prop bets on this. I don't know what the number is on Chris Hogan. I just have a gut feeling that he's going to have a big game for the Patriots because they're going to take Edelman out.
You're the best. The former head coach of the Bills is going to neutralize the guy who would eventually be the Super Bowl MVP, and the former Bills wide receiver is going to rise up and have an unbelievable game for the New England Patriots. And, of course, that's why we love you, Masterstroke. Wildly inaccurate in your predictions.
It's unbelievable when I hear things like that now, to think of the moish that I put on that player by saying that. It's unbelievable that power was available to me, and unfortunately I never used it to any type of monetary advantage, which I probably should have done back then.
Well, there are a lot of people they're actually concerned that you're appearing on the show knowing that you have this history of just saying good things about the Bills and then bad things are sure to follow. But that's in the past. That's in the past. You called the last time you actually gave a prediction on this show. You called Ravens losing to the Bills 23-20. Wouldn't you know that was the exact score how it played out
from a couple of seasons ago?
Yeah, it's going to be a tough game, but I actually like the Bills in a low-scoring game, like 23-20. We've always figured out how to stop their offense. Thankfully, not completely, but we seem to have always had a decent time against Lamar Jackson. And they always seem to be a lot lower scoring than usual. I just have a feeling it's going to be lower scoring, and the Bills will be right around their spread with a 3-point win somewhere in there. But I like them in the low 20s, somewhere there.
It's possible, Master Stroke, but we're going to hold you accountable one way or the other. So you've got them winning something that they normally don't do, a close game against the Ravens. You say 23-20 on Sunday.
I do. That 0 for their last 8 has got to end somewhere, and I think it ends this week.
We have a theory, Master Stroke. Our theory in the sports bar is that the further south you got, the more rational your head became. And because you're out of the blast zone, now you make predictions correctly. We have no use for you. I mean, you're essentially banned from the show until you can start making some wildly inaccurate picks again.
Yeah, and you know what? If you had talked to me before the season, and I think, Gene, you were with me on this if I listened correctly, I thought the Bills this year going into the season, I thought they'd be at 9 wins, and they're there already. And I know you guys weren't far off from your prediction earlier this year, right? With total wins for them.
They've exceeded my prediction. I thought they were an 8-win team.
Yeah, I had 10-7, which means, boy, this would have to go really bad in order for that to happen. I guess, dare I ask this question? Master Stroke, how do you see the rest of the season playing out for Buffalo?
Well, if I take it game by game, I think we handle the 49ers. And the reason I think that there's 2 reasons. One, they've struggled and not looked like the same 49ers we've seen the last few years. But 2, and I don't know if you guys have talked about it yet because it's only a couple games after the Chiefs game, McDermott has never lost after a bye week.
Yep.
And I know that doesn't matter really anything from year to year, but to me it means something that he gets them prepared somehow. So I like him to beat San Fran. I don't know about that Rams game. I think back to, what was it, the season opener a couple years ago where we pretty much handled them. Mm-hmm. And they might have been a better team then than they are now. So we'll see. But the game I'm really looking forward to is that Detroit game. I don't know if you guys have talked about it, but there's no better Super Bowl that I would love to see, and I'm sure you guys might even agree, than a Detroit-Buffalo where at least somebody wins a bowl for the first time. And I think that game has the makings of the Chiefs-Rams game a few years ago where the over-under was 60. I think it ended up being 54-51.
Right.
So I'm excited for that. I'm excited to see what they do with Detroit because, honestly, I don't think there's a better benchmark right now in the NFL than that. And then the last 3 games, I mean, they should win those games. So, I think there might be a couple losses sprinkled in between then and now, but I certainly think they got that home field's in play.
You're growing like McDermott here. You're saying home field is in play. I thought for sure we're going to win the Super Bowl. Look at this. Nothing. You're growing up here, Master Stroke. You are learning just as Sean McDermott is.
I'm trying, Gene. I hate to set expectations that high. I will tell you that the week before where they beat Miami on that Bass 61-yard field goal, my family was ready to disown me because I said when they lined up for the field goal, there's no way he's making it to phone overtime.
Oh, there we go.
Yes, he's back. Our resident mush. You're the best. Chris, thanks for making time for us on your ride. Happy anniversary, buddy. Let's talk again soon.
Sounds good, guys. Go Bills.
You got it. There's Master Stroke on the 7-year anniversary of the Nathan Peterman game. The day where Master Stroke was born as a legend in the sports bar. Our resident mush.
If I had time, wouldn't you want to go back and watch that game just to say, oh, my gosh, this is where the Sean McDermott era was at its lowest. Coming out of that, I'm thinking, honestly, I'm thinking, is this a one and done in Buffalo? Like, we went that poorly with that decision, thinking everything was going to kind of go sideways. Well, they get a win after that. Then you have the snow game against the Colts. They cobble together some wins in December, and then you get the Andy Dalton miracle there. Week 17.
Yeah, and the drought in his first year as head coach. I think it's interesting to look back at where they were versus where they are now, and how they all have grown. And McDermott is on top of that. You and I, everybody, we're all critical of the guy, and right now it's hard to be critical of anything he's done this season. He's done a great job. There have been a handful of times where you could kind of scratch your head and be like, all right, well, what was that at the end of the Houston game? And
you know, it's funny when we're joined by Matt Perino, and it's like, hey, after we went over Chiefs, we don't want to nitpick, but you brought in John Perry to be your guy here. And, like, what are we challenging that
you shouldn't
for?
be challenging anything unless you're 100% sure. And as bad as it was then for the Bills, we're talking about a team in his first year that did make it eventually to the postseason. There's no hope with the New York Jets. There's no hope. It's gone. Any hope that you had is over. I mean, if you went into the season, and a lot of us did, myself included, just a reminder to everybody that championships aren't won on paper. Because you can look at the paper, you can look at the roster of this Jets team and be like, talented team.
You said Jets had a better roster than Buffalo.
On paper, the Jets have a better roster than Buffalo. But again, you have a dysfunctional organization that starts at the top, firing their head coach earlier this season, and today their GM. And it shouldn't be a surprise. Joe Douglas, his contract was expiring. Maybe they get a jump on the NFL GM market by moving on from him now, or maybe it's just so bad and so ugly that something was said or something was done where it's like, we just need to part ways at this point. This is bad.
Well, at this point, Danger, you're done, right, with Rodgers, right? What?
He's not coming back. Who's Rodgers? Not just to the Jets, any team. Who wants him? When you watch him play, hell, when you watched him play in Green Bay, it was shocking to me that the Jets gave up what they gave up just to get him.
They gave up a second-round pick and a first-round pick swap.
Yeah.
For that.
That's right. So the idea that with the Jets, you're now gone, your head coach is gone, your GM is gone, your quarterback probably isn't coming back in 2025, and I don't know that Aaron Rodgers is going to be some hot commodity for another team. I tend to doubt it. So you're starting from scratch once again with the New York Jets. Starting from scratch. And if you're Joe Douglas, I think you're going to be fine. Joe Douglas is responsible for drafting a lot of very talented players. Joe Douglas might be also responsible for whiffing on quarterback in the draft. And if you do that, you don't get too many second chances with a team. But I think Joe Douglas is going to be okay. The Jets, however, will not be okay. I'm sorry.
Oh, Robert Saleh counting his money, being in Green Bay. Like, it's wrong to derive pleasure off of somebody else's failure. But if that failure is the reason you're in a different spot right now, Robert Saleh, I think, has every right to kind of chuckle about what's going on in New York right now.
Right. And again, dysfunctional teams do dysfunctional things. None of us should be surprised because this is what the Jets have been with Woody Johnson as their owner all along. You can't fire the owner. Can't fire the owner.
It's like we said this earlier. I think it looks more true right now. Like, who is the team that's closest to challenging Buffalo?
It's New England.
By far.
It's New England.
By far.
Yes.
They have a clean cap. You might have something at quarterback, still on a rookie deal. Now the Jets are so far in the rear view. Look, we kind of knew, right? Like, for the Jets, it's not going to be this team that's going to win the Super Bowl, like Mike Clay of ESPN said, but I didn't expect it to go this bad, this poorly. For Aaron Rodgers, really, that's the story here, right? He's the cancer on this team.
Nobody was upset when he left Green Bay. Usually you'll hear teammates or fans or nobody really said, we know Devontae Adams liked him, whatever, but like when he left, it was like, okay, bye. Good luck out there. That should have been your first tell. And I think everything that we've heard about Aaron Rodgers is accurate. And I think the most polite way to characterize him is he is the guy who has to be the smartest guy in the room at all times. I think I'm being polite when I say that. That's me characterizing his personality, who he is. And for some people, that might be, if you're Nathaniel Hackett, you love that guy. You want to be around that guy.
All right, but in the ultimate team sport like football.
Can't be that guy.
No.
Cannot be that guy.
No.
866-4326, 585-866-4FAN.
Yeah, just a word. Like, if you're going to call in and say, hey, I want to just pass it along, guy, the answer is no, okay? I'm screening the calls here. So if you
somebody's trying to get through our producer?
Yeah. No. I don't know. If you want to come on, I'll talk to you real quick. I will screen you, but I'm not going to listen to your take off the air and validate your take. Okay? If you're going to call,
you're getting on the air.
You're getting on the air. Have some fortitude.
You're getting on the air if I'm going to revert to Romy and back in the day. It was have a take, don't suck.
Yeah.
Have a take, don't suck. It's a simple rule in sports talk radio. And look, we love doing this every day. We love the interaction. We love getting you on with us at 866-4326.
But if your first words out of your mouth are, hey, I don't want to go on the air, but if you can tell the guys, nope, you want to do that, then you write us on X.
Sure.
Very simple. The Fan Rochester. If you don't want to come on the air and you still want to get your take, and if we just by writing to us on X doesn't mean we're going to read it on X, but that's right. Another way to reach us.
Yeah. Well, some of the regulars need a little bit of training. That's all.
That's all.
Let's get to a round of shots next.
Oh, yeah. I hated seeing this last night. Ovechkin getting hurt. We'll give you an update on his status. Oh, how are things going with the Philadelphia 76ers? We haven't gotten to this story yet.
Yeah.
This coming across today. The NBA tonight is a really interesting game. We have the MLB award season upon us here, Danger. And then, yes, it's a time of year where coaches get fired at every level of football, but I've never seen a coach after he get fired, doing something like this.
All right, we'll get to a round of shots next. And with those rules in mind, don't forget last call coming up before 6 o'clock, 585-866-4FAN. You can have the final say in the sports bar, 585-866-4326.
Welcome back to We the Hobby. You know what time it is? A little something special today. Oh, Nick. Is that a corn? That ain't no corn. What? That's a super corn! Oh, wow!
Visit us at 23 Arlington Street in Rochester.
After my car
Fan Rochester Sports Update.
More turmoil for the New York Jets today. They fired GM Joe Douglas. Phil Savage, the former Browns GM, will take over on an interim basis. As for the Bills, things looking good here in terms of the record and the bye week. Sean McDermott on what he plans to work on.
A little bit of it is rest. I think a little bit of it is, having a chance to do some self-scouting and evaluation of what we do and how we do things and fundamentals as well. I think the other part is, making sure, we put together a good game plan for when the players return as well.
Boston Bruins today firing head coach Jim Montgomery, assistant coach Joe Sacco taking over. Longtime St. John Fisher football coach Paul Vosberg announcing his retirement today. Vos had been the head coach there since the year 1991. Gene Battaglia on the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan Rochester.
If you want pure, unfiltered, unadulterated sports, you've come to the right place. 95.7 FM, The Fan, Rochester.
Back in the sports bar, time for a round of shots.
Alex Ovechkin off to the best start in his career. Who would have thought that? Up to 15 goals already on the season. He's only 27 away from breaking Wayne Gretzky's record of 894 career goals. But things on hold right now. Leaving last night's game with a knee injury. The Capitals saying, all right, it's not season ending. It's not major, but it's not anything that he's going to be on the ice anytime soon. They're determining it week to week. As we mentioned, best start for Ovechkin. He's never scored 15 goals in the first 18 games of the season. The Sabres, by the way, they begin the West Coast swing tomorrow night against the LA Kings.
Now, going into this season, I know a lot of people were on this story. Ovechkin's going to break Gretzky's record. Ovechkin, he's going to do it. He's going to do it. I'm still doubtful. I would actually be more surprised.
What?
Believe it or not. I will be surprised when he breaks that record. I will give him his credit and say that's amazing. I really don't know that I see him breaking this record.
Okay, they're off to a good start, but again, he's at a goal, so why would you think
age?
Okay, he would get to at minimum, if healthy, 30 goals this year. I still think he could get to 30 goals this year.
We don't know how severe this knee injury is. And we don't know how he comes back in response to this knee injury.
Okay, well, that's fair. That's fair. But he's going to be here until he gets that record.
Is he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Leona,
at some point, the body breaks down. At some point, you look around and you just can't.
Again, the eye test doesn't work. Ovechkin isn't the guy like Jaromir Jagr who's, skating twice a day and doing everything to, keep his career going. If Jagr could, he'd be playing in the league right now. He loves the sport that much. Ovechkin's just a different guy. It's funny how you get one championship and the image of this guy changes.
Oh, everybody hated this guy.
Everybody hated him. He was the forward who didn't back check, but then he became this lovable figure who had this magical playoff run.
Okay, maybe I'll lighten up on my stance. Maybe he gets it, but I don't think it's this season. I know he's gotten off to a hot start.
No. Right.
But you're only 27 away from breaking Gretzky's record. I just wonder how much longer will Washington or another team say, yeah, he's got it. And I don't know the severity of this knee injury. If he comes back and he looks like Ovi and he's playing at the same clip that he's playing at to start this season, then I'm wrong. But I'm telling you, man, at his age and with all the wear and tear on his body, I think it's going to be tight. I think it's going to be tight.
Do you think there are people rooting against this, knowing how beloved Wayne Gretzky is?
Well, I love Gretzky. Gretzky, as a hockey player growing up, as a fan of the sport, there will never be anybody better in my mind than Gretzky. Never. And I don't care if Ovechkin goes beyond Gretzky's goal record. But to me, it's always going to be Gretzky. One, and the generation prior to me would probably argue Gordie Howe. Gordie Howe was the complete package. He did it all. Yeah. Maybe that's where we're all different, and maybe this is the Jordan LeBron debate of the NHL. But for me, it'll always be Gretzky. I don't care if Ovechkin breaks his record or not. Nobody did what Gretzky did as far as his impact on the game, his play of the game, how he went about it. He's just unbelievable.
It's going to be one of those debates because then you could say, well, look at the goaltending now as opposed to when Gretzky was. Look, it's going to be It's going to be weird not to have the great one at the top. I think it's inevitable that Ovechkin's going to break this record, but it's going to be on hold.
I'll be happy if it happens, but I'm not holding my breath. I actually think that it's going to be tight. I think it's going to be tight. I don't know how much. Well, we'll see. We'll see how it all shakes out.
Yeah, this is kind of common in sports, right? Team down and out. We got to have a meeting. Let's have a meeting. And that's what the 2-11 Philadelphia 76ers did. But this wasn't your typical meeting. When the players got together, according to Shams Charania of ESPN, that's where Tyrese Maxey called out Joel Embiid for being repeatedly late to team meetings.
Good.
Players then told Sixers coach Nick Nurse they want to be coached harder.
Good.
And coaches said, okay, well, we'll coach you harder, and we want you to practice with purpose and attention to detail.
Good. Because I get the sense that Embiid is a problem, and for as good as he's been, he can't be what he's been so far this year and expect people to just give him a pass, including his own teammates. I love that Maxey called him out.
Well, can you say the one that really needs to be called out is Morey, the GM? Because, hey, it didn't add up night one. It's opening night. You played in the Olympics, but you're out because of left knee management.
Guy's always injured. He's always injured. He's going to be injured for the rest of his career. You're always going to have to deal with this. So with that in mind, if you're the Sixers, if you're Morey, trade him. Get him off the team. Get something now while he still has some value before he completely breaks down, and make him somebody else. He's the sabotage drop of the NBA. Get something of value. Get him out. Maxey, in doing what he just did, that's leadership. That's a leader on that team.
What do you think they're saying on WIP in Philadelphia?
Get rid of him.
They're like, this is Maxey's team now.
Get rid of him.
Maxey's team.
Get something in return. Get rid of him.
Got a marquee matchup in the NBA tonight. 15-0 Cleveland. Yes, if you haven't been paying attention, the Cavs. And look, they haven't done it against all slappies. They've beaten the Bucks twice. The Knicks. 15-0 Cleveland playing 11-3 Boston in the Garden tonight. 7 o'clock on TNT. That's going to be followed up by Oklahoma, San Antonio. The Spurs without second-year player Victor Wembanyama. The 20-year-old has a right knee contusion.
So when you see a team like Cleveland go 15-0 to start the season, do you pay attention to that, or do you view it as you would like the Rays having the hot start that they had to start the Major League Baseball season a couple of seasons ago, right? Like, it's such a long season and so much can happen and injuries can become a factor that you don't want to get too overly enthusiastic over a 15-0 start.
Right. This is the best start since the Warriors start where they just kind of stomped their way through and they won a championship. I don't think Cleveland has actually that many. Look, you give them credit. And they're in the conversation. I think a lot of us entering the year were like, oh, if you're ranking the East, it's Celtics, Knicks, and then maybe the Sixers. No, now Cleveland is the top challenger to Boston. Maybe Boston wins tonight.
Yeah, I would say you put Cleveland now safely ahead of teams like Milwaukee and even Philadelphia, obviously, with the slow start to Philadelphia. So they're entering the chat. And tonight's a nice test. If they can get past Boston and move to 16-0, it's still November, and there's a lot of the season left to be played, obviously. It's a nice story, but I'm not reading so much into it that I'm thinking, oh, Cleveland's the team in the East to beat. I don't know.
I got to be honest. I don't know if this is a normal game where you're on the normal floor, or is this going to be
I think this is a NBA Cup game.
NBA Cup game, great.
I think so. God, we really should know this. But, yeah, I mean, are we paying attention to the NBA?
No, we can be honest with everybody.
Are we paying attention to the NBA at this time of year? Not as much as we probably are when football season is done.
That is true. We certainly didn't pay attention to the MLB awards last night. Oh, right. That's beginning tonight. It's going to be the managers of the year announced at 6 o'clock. In the American League, 3 teams from the Central, A.J. Hinch of Detroit, Matt Quatraro of the Royals, and Stephen Vogt of the Guardians.
Congratulations. They'll get nominated because they get to beat up on the White Sox all season long.
Right. Carlos Mendoza, the Mets in the National League, Mike Schilt of the Padres, Pat Murphy of Milwaukee are up for the award. The Rookie of the Year went to 2 pitchers, Paul Skeens, the Pirates, Luis Heel of the Yankees.
Deserving. Who gets the Manager of the Year awards, Gino?
I think it is Mendoza and the Mets.
I agree.
And I'm going to go off the board and say A.J. Hinch. Even though Cleveland won, Detroit was so kind of down and out.
Feels right.
Coaches get fired all the time. They do. Charlotte football head coach Biff Poggi.
Oh, Biff.
Yeah, Biff.
Hey, Biff.
I've never, isn't that the character from
Yeah, Back to the Future.
Back to the Future.
Yeah, he's the bully.
Yeah, Biff Poggi.
Listen, Biff. No, Biff.
Oh my gosh, that's pretty good there. You're doing the dad there.
Oh, I could do a Crispin Glover. Yeah.
Yeah,
Crispin Glover. A lot of repeated viewings of Back to the Future back in the
Keep
day.
your hands off her.
Yeah.
Biff Poggi went 6-16 in Charlotte. Oh, well. Fired after not even 2 full seasons. Here's where it gets a little weird. First day of practice for the team following the firing and walking onto the field with his arms in air in victory is the fired head coach. The players all stop what they're doing. They run over to him. Security doesn't care. Poggi has every reason to celebrate. The school's going to be paying him $1.3 million to do nothing.
Wow, congratulations. Hey, for what it's worth, Charlotte, I am willing to adopt your team as my dynasty in NCAA, and I have a feeling I can guide the program to a better than 6-16 record. So my phone line is open. Feel free to reach out to me. I could do as good, if not a better job than Biff Poggi based on my experience in NCAA 25. Thank you.
What is Biff short for? That was the only time I've ever heard that name.
Bifford?
Yeah.
Biff. It's just got to be you can't even say it's like a nickname or a shortening of the middle name.
No.
Unless your initials are like BF. Benjamin Franklin Poggi. Biff. You stay away, Biff. $1.3 million to suck at your job.
Mike Danger, the hidden talent for impressions.
Tomorrow on the show,
we have a little different segment coming up tomorrow.
Tell me about this.
So, new sponsor of the show, We the Hobby. Breaking. Are you familiar with breaking, Danger?
So, I have a friend from Chicago who maybe like 10 years ago, he reached out to me, and he was in the industry, and he reached out to me, and he's like, hey, I want you to voice my show. I'm like, what show are you talking about? He's like, I do a show on YouTube called Top Shelf Breaks. I'm like, oh, tell me about it. And he's trying to explain it to me, and I didn't really understand it, but he gave me the scripts, and I read his thing. So I was like the voice of his YouTube show.
Now, welcome back to Top Shelf Breaks.
Right.
Okay.
And so I know We the Hobby here locally has become like the source for breaking. And I would just love to learn more about it because it sounds like a lot of fun, especially if you're a sports fan. This is kind of cool, right?
Yeah, they do the live stream of the break, and then the cool thing is, oh my gosh, do you end up with something that could actually be valuable? We'll talk to them, and then, we'll have our guy PJ Glasser stopping by too tomorrow.
Yeah, the host of Send It In on the BetQL Network. So a lot of winning tomorrow on the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia. If you want to play some wagers on college or pro football, we'll have PJ for that. And if you want to learn more about breaking, We the Hobby coming in at 4:25 tomorrow afternoon. The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia. We're back on the air tomorrow starting at 3. Big thank you to our guests this afternoon. Tuesday, always a whirlwind here in the Sports Bar. Michael F. Florio from NFL Network with your Week 12 waiver wire report. Mike Leone, head coach of the Rochester Americans, in advance of tomorrow night's game against Laval and this weekend's Friday night tilt against Hershey and Saturday night matchup against Utica. And Matt Perino of the Syracuse Post-Standard, who shared some thoughts on the Buffalo Bills as they're in their bye week. All of those appearances, all of those conversations, available wherever you get your podcasts. Just search out the Sports Bar. That includes the free-to-download Odyssey app. Big thanks to everybody for checking us out on the YouTube channel at The Fan Rochester, on Twitch at The Fan Rochester. JR Sport Brief next on The Fan Rochester. Have a great night.
The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.